trigger to mute the stream so I don't get feedback.
All right. Hello, everybody. How's it going? Can y'all hear me? It's Chrisiosity here, and I am with some really cool... Oh. Speaking of which, I am with some really cool lefties, and we're just going to talk about general... Oh, you know, not like there's anything going on recently, or, you know, situations or anything like that, but we'll see what we can talk about. So...
yeah, it's kind of amazing because we've been planning this hangout for a while, and I did not expect to be discussing right-wing terrorism on it. But, that was naive.
The Brazil situation as well. It's kind of serendipitous.
Well, I don't know if that's the word I would use.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
All right, so I'll just go through and introduce everybody. I think that people will probably know most of the people here who watch me. You probably know everybody else, but we have the beautiful and talented Gwen No Fear.
Hi.
We have the also beautiful and talented Thought Slime.
No, I'm the regular Thought Slime.
Oh, sorry.
Easy mistake to make.
And we have a very excited, we have, people will have known him as Garrett. My friend Dan is here. Hey.
Yeah. I'm back to being called Garrett now. I've made my new channel. It's just there's no content on it yet.
Oh, cool.
It's one of the 3 most important things on a channel.
Yes, I'd say it's definitely an oversight on my part that thus far there's none. Yeah,
you know what?
Should work on that.
Easy mistake to make on your 3rd YouTube channel.
Yeah, you think I would have got it by now?
It's okay. Yeah, no, 4th time's the charm.
I'm working on my first video at the moment. I have some overseas shipping that I need to receive before I can finish it, and New Zealand is a bit of a backwater in that regard. Things take ages to get here. So it's going to be a little while, probably at least 2 weeks, but yeah.
Did you back up any of your old content?
So there's copies of some stuff around. H Bomber Guy, Harry has the video that he did a video about, the response to Sargon. Kevin Logan mirrored the response to Armored Skeptic. I've got 2 of my old videos sitting around, and there's probably some others floating around. Yeah, I'll do like archival uploads of all that stuff at some point.
Well, cool. Because I love your videos, and I'm glad you're going to do more. That's awesome.
I am kind of glad that channel doesn't exist anymore, though, because being that I changed my politics midway through, there's a lot of stuff on there that I no longer agree with. So it's kind of, and I would have taken me ages to go through and like delete all that stuff, and probably
How did you change?
Well, when I started my channel, I had stopped being an anarchist because I became an anarchist when I was 19 or so, and then I just sort of slowly drifted back to liberalism, and I blame Obama personally because the Obama election.
Obama.
Yeah, I just kind of like, I don't know, I let that like comfort me too much. And then like, you know, I believed his rhetoric about, you know, being a like progressive and all that. And so I just kind of like drifted away from it. I think in my early videos, I described myself as a liberal in practice and an anarcho-syndicalist in theory. And then literally the day after Trump got elected, I did a live stream. And in that, I was like already an anarchist again.
Did I ever tell you that was when I found you?
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. I had been in this kind of like quasi like Marxist, but doesn't have a lot of good ideas about like practices kind of phase when I was in college. And right as I was getting out, Donald Trump gets elected. So I'm looking on YouTube just like as happenstance one day. And there's this video by this guy who I had never seen before in my life. And it turns out there's this dude on YouTube called H Bomber Guy, and he did this video and he name drops you in that. So I was like, okay, well, I'll go check this out. And then just immediately, like I was into it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hey, Thought Slime, I was going to ask you, like, I'm a big fan of your Q and Anarchy series, like in the scripts that I'm writing for my new channel. In the scripts that I'm writing for my new channel, I've already recommended those videos twice. But yeah, I was going to ask you though that in most of those videos, you do. I mean, they're overviews; they're not supposed to be in depth, but you do spend a bit of time, like when you're attacking something, you do spend a bit of time proposing an alternative for it. But in your police video, you didn't really do that, and I was wondering why.
I did a little bit of it, but if I'm going to be honest with you, the reason I didn't really do it so much is because while I was writing the script for that video, American Johnson released his video on the same subject, and I was like, oh, this is better than what I'm doing, so I'm just going to change focus and make mine more of an argument against the police than an attempt to explain what we should do instead. And also, I think there's a certain amount of futility of trying to say, here's precisely what we should do, because it's the whole point is that the community should decide for themselves. And I think if I'm being kind of prescriptive in that way, I think it opens up a lot of doors that I'm not really comfortable with.
That's fair. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't think about the fact that, yeah, you're right. The non-compete video did come up around that time. Yeah. And that is a good video.
Why when I got to my my part on that, where I was like, just go watch this video. Like, yeah.
I have a question about that though. In that I do think that one of the things that the right does is repetition really well. Like, I wonder, there have been a lot of videos that I've gone, oh, somebody else did that. They did that. I don't need to do that. It's already been covered. Is that...
I do think that one of the things that the right does very well is repetition. And I've noticed that some of the videos that they've covered, I've noticed that other people have covered them.
I mean, you're right. That is a thing. Because, I mean, like, I used to do that on the old channel. I used to be like, oh, you know, I won't do a video about that because Captain Andy has already, or something like that, you know, like, or Ranting Feminist or somebody like, but yeah, you're right. I mean, that, it doesn't, I mean, I guess I did that because I figured most of my subscribers were subscribed to them too, you know, but yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt to reinforce messages.
Well, I don't know, you know, I know that in terms of like brain science and neurology and that sort of thing, just repetition does sort of cement things in people's heads. People are more likely to believe something if they hear it twice. And that's just a stupid monkey thing that we all have left over from, you know, whenever that was useful from us. But like, in all honesty, I don't know. And I'm of two minds about it. I'm just like, you know, I hate that repetition thing and I think it's stupid. And I can never understand the mindset of people who want to watch 37 identical videos about an identical nonsense thing. Like, but I don't know if we're, if we have to think strategically, or I don't know.
I guess one downside of the right-wing tactic is that it makes it easy for people like us to go, look how much they just mindlessly repeat each other and just do a montage of like them saying all the same stuff. Like you see that a lot in leftist videos. Like, for example, I was watching one today about the that NPC meme, stupid thing.
Is it the one that that I'm thinking of? It's Lacking Saint.
Yes. Yeah, and he opens the video with just like a bunch of like anti-SJW YouTubers just saying the same thing in different words over and over again.
I had actually had plans to do that exact gag in a video. So like about the NPC meme. So
right, yeah.
Well, I guess we're not immune to it either.
But yeah, and when it comes to anarchist justice systems and stuff, like the reason I brought it up is because it is something that you hear anarchist people asking about a lot, people who are anarchists but aren't really that familiar with the theory yet, will ask about like, what are the ideas for that, what's been proposed by like Kropotkin or whatever. And it is something that people want, I know that, so it is something I think that anarchist YouTubers should focus on.
Yeah, it's kind of it's one of those things where I don't really want to spend a lot of energy on, because it's one of those questions that I feel like people ask just so that they can kind of dismiss your answer.
Possibly, yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of they go, well, how would you do this? And then you can explain to them in explicit detail, but the answer that you get back is the same question. It's like, I feel like I just said that. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I wonder and maybe this is a bad habit to get into, but I sometimes wonder like how much of those questions are in bad faith.
Yeah, it can be difficult to determine bad faith at times, especially early on when arguing with someone. Yeah, and then you realize, oh god, I've just wasted the last half an hour on the sea lion who doesn't care at all about what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's definitely the sort of perspective of a content creator, is like just getting bombarded with all these questions. And it really sucks, because there was this one time that I was getting the same like typical sea lion-y questions about feminism on Twitter. And I was like, oh man, this is almost like so old that it's funny to me. Like, I kind of want to make fun of this person just a little bit. You know, I don't want to get into their life. I just want to make fun of the questions. And then I checked their Twitter profile because I had that kind of that nagging doubt. And it turned out that they were like 14 or something. And I was like, I would feel bad. So I just ended up being like, look, kid, you got to just give it a little bit of time. Maybe you'll get it. Maybe you won't. Just be a little patient with yourself and with other people.
I guess one thing about anarchist justice systems is that, unlike a lot of things to do with anarchism, that it's actually really easy to find the answers to, and you don't really need to go around asking. It can be difficult to actually find that stuff, like what anarchist theorists think about that. Like Rocker never mentions it once, as far as I remember, in any of his work. It just sort of doesn't go there. I know Kropotkin does.
A little bit, yeah. I didn't find Kropotkin's answer particularly satisfying, but I think that it's one thing to talk about it in a general sense, but I think what I try to avoid is when people kind of throw a million what if scenarios at you. And this is kind of something I touched on in the video, where it's like, there's scenarios in which an anarchist justice system might not produce like the best results. Like, you can imagine a scenario in which it might happen, but like no system is ever going to produce 100% reliable results. And I think it's just like my choice is, I can either agree with you and say like, yeah, that would suck, like that wouldn't work, or I can just kind of like lie and pretend that it would and not like notice that reality. And it just feels like, I don't know. That's kind of why I don't talk about it as much. It just feels like there's very little to be gained from it, unless you're, as amiable as American Johnson, who I think people pick fights with him a great deal less than they do with me, because I'm a bit more cantankerous.
Yeah. Yes, I know what it's like.
So much. I don't want to wax poetic about him, but
yeah, no, I like him a lot. He's great. That whole channel is just a wild ride. It's great.
Guys, remind me, and I will put links to all of these people that we're talking about.
Yeah, sure.
I will forget, so.
I believe the URL to American Johnson's page is patreon.com/thoughtslime.
Oh!
Off the top of my head, I think that's what it is.
Yeah, everyone just type that in and see, and let us know.
And while you're there, maybe just check around, see what's cool, see what's happening on that site. You might find stuff.
That sounds like a really good page. That, I mean, and I don't want to like push the boundaries or anything, but I think maybe you could donate to it, and maybe them Thought Slime would buy somebody that they like a good pair of titties. You never know.
Well,
I'm embarrassed that I don't give anything to you, Thought Slime, to be honest. But at the moment,
I would worry about that.
Well, it's just because normally I would spread the money, the little money that I do have around for that, among more anarchist YouTubers. But at the moment, I basically just give it all to Anarchopac, because Anarchopac is having a financially difficult time. So just felt.
And she's a genius.
No, that too, yeah. But she's going through a rough patch. So yeah. And it's amazing to me, like, that she can be in the final stages of writing a thesis, a PhD thesis, and put out videos that are as high quality as that one around about intersectionality, like, at the same time. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. See, now I feel bad. It's like, today I made pumpkin seeds. They were good.
Yeah, I haven't done anything today.
I feel like the pumpkin probably did most of the work.
Oh, you say that. That's only because you've never separated the seeds from the slime.
Yes, I have.
No. No.
You know who you're talking to? I am slime incarnate.
Yeah, but this
Oh,
slime...
yes. All over the insides of pumpkins.
That was me.
Oh, shit. Well, then I'm pissed.
I want my seeds back.
Why do you have to grip them so hard? Make it so hard to yank them away.
Maybe because someone's trying to take them from me.
Adam Rainstop has asked in the chat what an Anarchopac situation is. I don't know how public she is about that, and I wouldn't want to reveal anything I'm not supposed to, so I'm going to have to just say I can't answer that. Ask her.
But make a big donation to her first.
Yeah. I think we're all universally in favor of that. Yeah, and make a small donation to me. You know, since you're out there. But
so should we talk about the election? Because that's a lot of fun. Jesus.
I'll
tell you what. One thing I'm sick of, is when Americans tell me that America is the greatest country in the world. Because if anything proves that not to be the case, it is this election cycle. Holy crap. The shit that Republicans have been doing to subvert democracy, the lack of democracy. I mean, it's absolutely off the charts.
Yeah, when they found out those voting machines were switching votes, and their actual response was, "Oh, there's just nothing we can do about that." It's like, we don't have any legal basis to recount them. It's like, don't you think that's kind of a problem?
It really makes me think that shouldn't there be like a non-partisan group that's in charge of elections and the districting and all that stuff? Like, if you make that partisan, aren't you really asking for trouble?
I mean, you'd think that would occur to somebody. It probably did occur to somebody who got paid to not think about it ever again.
Yeah.
I mean, it's when people are just sort of openly saying things like, well, you know, you don't really know what's going to happen because, sure, we know who most people are going to vote for, but it doesn't really matter. So, you know, what with the laws and the districting and gerrymandering, it doesn't matter.
Like,
I'm glad that we're so open about this now, I guess.
I watch a lot of oh, no, go on, sorry.
I love the complete non-answer too. If you talk to any conservative about election tampering, they'll just say, "Oh, but America's a republic, not a democracy," as though that that's not anything. You're not saying anything.
Yeah, I mean, you might as well be saying America's not a sandwich; it's a chicken sandwich. It's like, what? Yeah.
Well, it's also kind of funny. That's the closest you'll get a conservative to admitting that the founding fathers kind of sucked. That's as close as it comes.
The other thing you get when you ask right-wingers about, or you confront them with it, is they'll just bring up the fraudulent voting as if that's a real problem, because they've been programmed to bring that up as soon as you bring up your point. It's like, oh, what point do I bring up in response to this? Oh, that's right, the fake voting. Yeah. Yeah. It's tedious.
Talk about all of the dead people registered to vote, and it's like, yeah, people die.
Yeah, it happens.
They register to vote, and then sometimes they die afterwards.
Yeah, and when you're the executor of someone's estate, that's not going to be the first thing that pops into your mind is get them taken off the the electoral roll. That's But yeah, I just
and you know, obviously we had the court case. Kavanaugh's very first. He popped his little legal cherry in the Supreme Court on that one, getting rid of so many Indigenous people's right to vote. So that was good. I thought that was perfect, I guess, in its own sort of way. It was just really, really sucking. I think people probably know about that. It was most people who live on reservations or in these very rural areas where the native populations live. They don't have street addresses. They have P.O. boxes because they are not given street addresses.
Yeah.
And then they just decided, well, that means they can't vote now.
Even though they've been voting through that system since like the start of the country. Well, since they got the vote, which I don't know when that was, but yeah. Like one of the things I was going to bring up is that other representative democracies do have solutions to a lot of these problems. For example, there's one I heard about a Republican, putting out on his mailer the date for the election, and then in black neighborhoods he put a different mailer out with a different date that was 2 days later after the election. And like you can't do that in New Zealand because political material that gets put out into like people's mailboxes doesn't have any information about like that stuff, the election, when the date is, where to vote. That stuff is all handled by the state. That's all handled by non-partisan forces within the state. And so you can't, like, you're not allowed to mislead people in that way. There's no way to do it. So there are ways to get around some of this stuff.
Yeah, if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Like, if your system of power wasn't structured around making sure that these things didn't get fixed.
But like that guy, he did it in 2016. And then he was like, oh, you know, it was a mistake. We put the wrong thing on by mistake. And then he did it again this year, in the same week. And they were like, oh, yeah, it was another mistake. It's like, no, it wasn't. It clearly wasn't.
Sounds like it could plausibly be a little oopsie doodle. It's like, I know that if I, for example, like if that was my job and it was like the most important thing on the flyer and I fucked it up once, I would probably not be that careful the next time, you know?
Yeah, I know, right?
Go, well, I didn't get in trouble last time, so, you know, I'm not going to be too thorough with it.
And then, you know, there's this other stuff, like there was another guy who did the same thing, but in that case, it was Latino voters that were getting misled, and it was the Spanish language version, and they claimed it was a translation mistake. But it's a number. It's like the number 7. That is the same in Spanish and English. Like they would have to manually change it. Yeah, it's so obviously false.
Yeah, and I guess we could. Well, one thing I should say: definitely vote, and also if you are turned away, you can ask for like a ballot or some sort of I forget what it's called, but you should ask them to give you something and to take to take down your information so that you can fix it and pass it in. Not that that necessarily is going to do a lot, but at least you should be able to annoy the people who have taken away your vote. Like
I should just clarify that when I was talking about the whole 7 thing, I mean, there was the numerical value. They hadn't written the word. Like it was literally just the numerical. So, and that's exactly the same in both languages. And throughout most of the world now, pretty much like the entire world uses Arabic numbers now.
Yeah, no.
Go ahead.
I'm pretty sure that in a lot of European countries, 8 means 7.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know what it is, Garrett? You know why you're confused? It's because you're doing it in metric.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I would strongly encourage all Americans to vote, unless you're a right winger. In that case, feel free to skip this one.
You can stay home. You know what? You've earned it. You've had a rough little while. Everybody's mad at you because people like you keep killing others, and so maybe treat yourself. Get some ice cream.
Yeah.
Watch whatever garbage you watch.
There's a good list going around of right-wing pundits who have regurgitated the false flag thing about the bomber, and there's a lot of people on that list. Like, it's pretty amazing the level of right-wing pundits that have actually bought into that. Like, it's messed up.
They immediately bought into it. Like, there wasn't a breath taken. And I don't know if anybody... like, it really annoyed me, some of the intellectual dark web types, some of the things that they were putting out, which were basically like, I know I got into some big arguments about Brett Weinstein basically saying, well, you have to be allowed to put out conspiracy theories without any pushback. Otherwise, people won't put out conspiracy theories that are unfounded.
You have to be able to mail people threats.
I saw the worst take I think I actually saw from anyone on the bomber, the Florida bomber guy, was from Steven Pinker on Twitter. God, yes. Did you see that? He was just like, "Oh, this isn't a news story. The bombs didn't even go off." It's like, are you fucking kidding me?
No, no crime committed. Let him go, boys. Sorry.
Well, hang on, because I'm pretty sure we had a situation like that in the 90s with was it the 90s with the World Trade Center? There was like an attempted bombing of the...
Well, it did. That bomb did go off though in 1993.
Oh, that bomb did go off. Okay. Well, it just goes to show I was a baby in the 90s.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is... I was actually having a discussion about this the other day. That is one of the terrorist attacks in American history that just sort of went under the radar and it got forgotten about. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about it earlier today because that Biggie Smalls lyric was on the radio, and it was what's the song? He's got a line: "Time to get paid, blow up like the World Trade." Did not age very well.
No, that's ouch.
Oh, it made me kind of sad actually because I was in the car and I was like, "Oh, I like this song," and then I realized the thing. Yeah.
Just one thing I don't want to brush past is Gwen saying she was a baby in the 90s because it is actual violence to make people
Yeah, I know, right? Holy crap! I was talking to someone the other day about how I was I got into the 90s hacker scene in about 97, and the person I was talking to was like, I was born that year. It's like, holy crap.
Yeah. I had that problem on my Discord server where people were like, yeah, I was born in 96. And I was like, get out of here. You should be in school right now.
All right, so I pulled up the Steven Pinker thing because I think it's worth highlighting just how terrible, incredibly terrible it is.
It was just trash. Just trash. Yeah.
He's a real Steven Stinker, if you ask me.
I did ask for it, but... All right.
Great.
I just saw Infinity.
So, all right. So, Steven Pinker. Can people see it? If they can't, I don't know what to do about that. So I'm just going to read it.
Unfortunately.
So once again, the press gets gamed, giving saturation coverage and agonized commentary to a minor event. It's not major news that a country of 325 million has a few malicious jerks who correctly anticipate 15 minutes of notoriety with a vindictive stunt.
Because stunt is a really appropriate word to use for attempted terrorist attacks. Yeah, that's really great.
They make it sound like a YouTube prank.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Exactly.
No, he's saying don't feed the trolls. That is literally what he's saying. Don't feed the trolls who send bombs to your ex-presidents. because that just
yeah, well,
in media
the perspective
outlets.
of this astounding. This dude was about to be like 10 John Wilkes Booths in a like brown paper bag, and now we're just like, oh, well, he's a conservative, so it's like it's not really real. It doesn't really matter, you know. We're just gonna like walk past this. It's kind of weird to me because, like that phrase, the press gets gamed. I feel like this is something that mainstream people talk about a lot when it suits them, but like. I'm going to phrase this in a way that's very earthy, let's say. The press is like the game, and this whole, like, the fact that this bomb issue has paralleled the propaganda about that caravan that's, like, a week's, like, walk, if that, like, from the, like, Southern American border. Like, that's... I don't get it. Like, there's something really whack about the focus that we've got here.
And just to take us back to the election just for a sec, because you just reminded me of something. One of the most mind-blowing things about what the Republicans have been doing this election cycle is trying to claim that they're the party of pre-existing conditions coverage. Like, that has just been an absolute joke. And, like, some of the most bold face of them has just been amazing. In one case, there was I can't remember what state she was in, but there was a woman who was running for the House of Reps, I think, I'm not sure. Anyway, and she was like, they brought up the fact that she put out a campaign ad saying she was for pre-existing conditions coverage while she's also taking part in that lawsuit that's trying to get rid of Obamacare because of pre-existing conditions coverage. And that some journalist came up to her, put a microphone in her face and was like, so do you care to comment on that? Because it seems weird. And she was like, God damn you people, you're always just repeating Democratic, you just read the Democratic mailer and just repeat whatever's on there. Can't we talk about the caravan? It's like,
yeah. I saw that. I think that was on Majority Report or something. They covered that. That's great.
It's like, you don't realize you're doing that exact same thing. You're just trying to derail the conversation and bring up talking points. That's although she does realize she's doing that, of course, but yeah.
I would love to just be able to respond like that to comments. Just like, I would prefer to talk about a subject that is convenient for me.
Well, it's like the Woody Harrelson AMA about Rampart. It's that basically, but politicians doing it now. It's like, can't we talk about Rampart? Yeah.
Maybe we should try. Like, you know.
Talking about Rampart? I haven't seen it.
No, nobody has.
Or just try being like, you know, they bring up something, just, I don't know. Antifa is violent, and you're like, listen, we all know that you're really just trying not to talk about, oh, I don't know, kids in cages. That's it. That's the thing you're not trying to talk about. So that's what we're going to talk about now.
I've got one, actually. I'm going to go off. Okay, ready? Are you all ready for this?
I'm ready.
Hold her back. Hold her back.
Okay, I don't want to spring it on you. Okay, goddamn you people. Can't we talk about how Jimmy Reefercake is the best musician of all time, and his collab with Adam Rainstopper, who's in the chat, in Authoritarian MAGA Hypocrite, was fucking lit.
That's right.
Yeah, how dare you not be talking about that?
That was the best 3 minutes of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk?
And
about
I also
that?
know what we're talking about.
Adam Rainstopper, who's in the chat, shout out, by the way. Yeah, I saw that. So like, they did a like musical collaboration, and I first heard it when I was listening to Majority Report. I heard they put the song on, and it was called, I think they've done a few now, but it was called Authoritarian MAGA Hypocrite. And it's like, if ska was like really funny, that's how it feels to me.
It sounds appealing, I got to admit.
Adam's pretty awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Friend of this channel and superstar, Adam Rainstopper, everyone.
You know, I was thinking about today, you know, the people are referring to this fucking piece of shit who shot up a synagogue as the synagogue shooter. And I chimed in and was like, well, actually, there's been so many synagogue shooters now that that's not actually a good name, because it's, you know, I can't tell who you're talking about. Well, right now we can, because it's in the recent news, but we got to come up with a better name for that dude, because synagogue shooter's been taken like a lot of times.
I don't know, like, because
see, that's the kind of thing that's really tempting to like make a quip about, and then it makes me so goddamn angry.
I know.
It's kind of what I'm struggling with, is I don't want to like give him, like, your first instinct is to like call him like a name, but it's you don't want to dignify him by like, you know, you don't want to make him sound cool or make his name remembered, but you can't really make fun of him either, because you're making light of a pretty serious tragedy. I don't know. It's tough. It's a tough thing to talk about.
Did you know that guy doesn't actually like Trump because Trump is not extreme enough? It's like, yep, that sounds about right.
That sounds like, yeah, I've heard that a few places. Can't think of where in InfoWars.
Well, the reason I brought it up is because the person whose take on it I found astounding was Paul Joseph Watson, whose take on it was he seemed to demonize that guy, not for the terrorism, but for the fact that he doesn't support Trump.
Well, I'm shocked by that, because he's normally such a level head. When I want to see someone with their head on a swivel, I go straight to PJ Dubs. Straight truth.
Oh my God.
Can I just say, I want to talk about one thing about Paul Joseph Watson, and I know this is kind of like a tangent, but when I was researching for a future video that I might not make now, but about the NPC meme, he had this long rant about how the left isn't funny like the right. And his example of a joke that his example of like a genius joke that he made was talking about how many memes he killed. And he said that, and this is like verbatim, he said, "I've killed more memes than the percentage of DNA in Elizabeth Warren's blood." Ooh. And this was like his killer bit. Like, funny stuff.
So wait, hang on. He's talking about, just skipping past the whole like race and ethnicity and the whole mix-up there rhetorically. He's talking about the idea of Elizabeth Warren having a certain percentage of like Native heritage in her blood, like that kind of concept. And then he's killed so few memes that it's comparable to the small amount of Native heritage she has, I guess.
He's mixed up the way like numbers work.
That's too thinky to be a joke. I don't.
But like, no, you guys are having a weird reaction because I brought it up because it's such a bad joke. Like, it's such a.
We're actually doing the math.
It is a joke though. So like, it's not funny. It's not funny, but it's funny that he thinks that's funny. If you ignore the racism part, which you shouldn't. But like, yeah.
The funniest joke about Paul Joseph Watson is himself. That's the only funny joke.
Yeah. I mean, I think we probably should talk about right-wing terrorism, which is not funny and is really, really a problem. And that's kind of a buzzkill, but
it is.
Yeah, I think we have to talk about, you know, where it's coming from and how to deal with it and why it's being treated in this bizarre way by people, as if it were some sort of, I don't know, just like extension of trolling and like all of a sudden the people that were ideas matter, look at the Quran, suddenly ideas don't matter. These are just random crazy people.
Yeah, well, there's
nothing to do with anything.
There was that tweet that's circulating around social media of that right-wing person who was like, how dare you associate us with him and demonize us on the basis of what one person does. There's millions of Trump supporters, and you can't vilify all of us on the actions of a few individuals. And then there's a Muslim person who retweeted it and just replied, stares in Muslim. It's like, yeah, you kind of missed the point there. It's like, you can't have it both ways. I think that, to me, that is the central thing about right wing, is that they tend to want a lot of different things two different ways at once. You know, they want to be able to demonize all Muslims, but not be demonized for right wing terrorism.
But
yeah,
the thing is,
go ahead.
There you go.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say it totally parallels the American rhetoric about the border with Mexico, and because there's a lot of right wing people who will tell you, well, you know, I don't hate all immigrants or all Mexican people. I just hate illegal immigrants, which is itself absurd. But even once you get past that, you can kind of notice that they actually really like pictures of just any like Mexican looking person to them, like just getting carted away by ICE or cops or whoever. So it's like they're willing to just sort of take anything to assuage the anger or to feed it in some cases.
Not to mention that the caravan of people they're so upset about are legally seeking asylum. So
yeah, also a lot of them are like kids and probably sick people.
But to the point about the right saying, oh, you know, you can't judge us all, you know, by the actions of one person. Literally, no one is. Like, no one. I have never seen someone say all of Trump supporters are terrorists. Like like it's such like a non-issue that they've, you know, imagined and taken over the conversation by insisting that people are saying that. I think all of Trump supporters are dicks, but I don't think they're all terrorists.
And whereas I literally have seen right-wing people say that all Muslims are terrorists, like a lot of times, that literally has happened.
Well, they've got that other line as well, where they're that they pull out a lot. And I remember, I for years, even before I was doing like YouTube stuff, for years I was really into like listening to like right-wing talk radio and just kind of trying to like figure out what they thought and how they argued certain conclusions. Just because I felt like it was sharpening for my wit in those arguments to be figuring out what I was up against. Because it's one thing to understand what you think the truth is, and it's another thing to sort of understand what your opponent is arguing and how. And one thing that I noticed is there's this very old bit of right-wing rhetoric, at least old in terms of, you know, my life, that which we've established is not old, that like a group is represented significantly by its like minority. It's kind of a twisted idea of like how vocal minorities tend to socially be the face of certain like social groups. There's a funny right-wing idea like groups are actually really are represented by whatever like chunk of seemingly homogenous, obnoxious, terrible, evil people reside within them.
You know, it reminds me of that thing I mentioned in my video I did a long time ago to Ahmed Skeptic, when he's like talking about how the leaders of the feminist movement are whichever activists are speaking loudest. It's like, no, that's not the case. It's the academics who literally do the knowledge production and are the thought leaders. And yeah, it's not just some random. And the reason they think that's the case is because that's the case for them. Their thought leaders are just whoever's talking loudest, whoever has the most subscribers, whatever. You know, well, it's not about whoever has good ideas.
Armored Skeptic has never read a book that didn't have a spaceship on the cover, so I don't know how he would know that.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
Just absolutely eviscerated. Look, no, I mean,
I find that funny.
He has a difficult time with reading, so it's kind of
and it's like he also has a difficult time with listening.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, Anarchopac, to bring up Zoe again, she has pretty severe dyslexia and manages to have read like most anarchist theory that's ever been written. So you know, it's not impossible; also, it's just difficult.
Yeah, there are
one thing I might not do if I had a lot of difficulty reading complicated ideas is present myself as kind of a genius who knows all of the ideas without having read anything about them. That might be something I might not do.
On Skeptic Explains.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, that's, you know, it's frustrating, and I guess I don't know what to even say about it. Like, I'm kind of done with people who are like, but they're the good ones. Well,
No.
Yeah,
No, fuck that.
I agree. Yeah.
It's
they've had every chance to be the good ones.
you can't. It's such like death by a thousand cuts, because you go, oh no, they're the good ones, but they're the fucking stepping stone to the bad ones. Like,
yeah.
Ugh.
Honestly, yeah, the better they are, and the more dangerous. Like you said, because people like Sargon are gateways to people like Richard Spencer, as Richard Spencer himself said.
And I was glad that Armored Skeptic talked about the man-spreading thing. I don't think that he did a very good job of it, personally, but I was glad that he pointed out that that whole thing in Russia was a hoax, right? The bleach on the people and the thing. But what he didn't bring up, of course, is that why is that hoax, and what is it being used for? And it's not just like, it's not just a troll being silly for attention. This is a country that is jailing people for being gay and decriminalizing domestic abuse. At the same time, it's putting this out as if like there's this horde of feminists that are out there being psychotically violent to people.
I'm going to say something that it's going to sound real postmodernist, but I think a lot of these ding-dongs, they cannot conceive of a message being pushed beyond what is literally said. And if you point out to them, like, there's a reason this hoax was done, they look at you like, what are you talking about? Like, they can't conceive of anything figurative or anything abstract. It's the what's in front of them is all they can see.
Yeah, what I find a lot with anti-SJWs is they do what I call analyzing a fact in a vacuum, where they'll just take one thing that is a fact and then just disregard everything else about reality. It's like, it doesn't work like that. You can't, things all fit in. It's all part of a puzzle, you know, and like, yeah, you can't just do that.
Yeah, and there's this sort of weird, and I think it's sort of an abuse of logic, because logic is, there's deductive logic and there's inductive logic, and I feel like they don't allow for inductive logic and they don't allow for critical thinking. Like, you can either prove somebody had this intent to do this thing or it didn't count, you know. And being that I'm not like that's kind of the sort of, you can't prove that they're racist, you can't prove that they're this. I can prove that the things that they did are racist. I can prove the things they said are racist. I can prove that people told them they were racist and they kept doing it. Like, no, I can't tell you what the inner monologue in their head was, and I don't see why that has to even factor in.
Yeah, it's funny about Greg and June, because I think they do see like narratives in the sense of like social conformity. They see narratives in kind of a democratic way, but what they don't tend, I think, to look into is grand narratives in the sense of like dominance hierarchies, like people paying other people who pay other people to push ideas. Like that starts to sound like conspiracy thinking to some people. And I think, you know, it's the difference between an outlandish fact and an outlandish conspiracy is just truth. So it's something you gotta look into.
Head, I think she's in the chat. Hi, Shu.
Oh, yeah.
Can we get her to fuck off?
Yeah, can she fuck off? That'd be nice. Yeah, I just when you, Chrissy, you mentioned I can prove the things he did are racist. That reminded me of something. A great little line from the Florida governor's race from Andrew Gillum. was doing a debate with the other candidate, the Republican candidate, and he was talking about how the Republican candidate DeSantis gets a lot of endorsements from the Klan and Nazis and various other like far right groups, racists of various kinds. And he goes, and I'm not saying that Ron DeSantis is a racist. All I'm saying is the racists seem to think he's a racist.
I hit dog will holler. That was the greatest. Like, look, I don't think that like any of these politicians, like I don't want to spit shine their shoes or anything, but that moment, that was a cool moment in American politics.
Yes, it was. And even Martin Luther King said a very similar thing. I think it was about Goldwater, where he said, I don't think that this person is racist. I think that they are good for racists. I think they give aid and succor to racists. Like, and I think that's just as bad. Like, and
there's a bizarre amount of focus on what politicians say above what they do. Like, and like when you look at Reagan, Reagan was called. It's a lot of right wingers and centrists and people just say that Reagan didn't support the racists because he denounced that when he was endorsed by the Klan, he denounced the Klan. It's like, well, what about the things he actually did? What about his policies? If you actually look at that, they're not anti-racist at all. They're very much the opposite of that, and that's why he was endorsed by the Klan in the first place.
I'm sorry, Garrett. I'll have you know that the Republicans were the party of civil rights. And they freed the slaves. So Democrats are the real racists. So you just got owned. You're owned now. So.
And I want to, like, in all honesty, I want to address what Shuan had said, because I think it's fair that she brought the criticism. Hey, I clicked on this and it's just YouTubers gossiping about other YouTubers. And I think that's a fair criticism. In general, I think that if you actually listen to us up to this point, you just clicked at a bad moment, as we discussed Brazilian politics and right-wing terrorism and the election and all these
she said we talk about YouTubers all day, and it's like, what did I just say about getting paid to talk about things? Like, if Shuan had became an SJW, she'd lose so much goddamn money. Like that, it blows my mind.
We have proof of this, like actual tangible evidence in that, look at people like Steve Shives, who when the divide in the atheist community happened, he took the unpopular side. Look what happened to his bottom line. And the same thing with Dusty Smith, Do
you know what I love about anti-SJWs, and you got to give them credit for this, is they never talk about other YouTubers. They never like respond to them or make fun of them at all. They're such straight shooters like that it really makes a lot of sense why it would bother them if someone else talked about them. Really makes you think. I feel put in my place.
Yeah. She never does that.
And that's true. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying that it would be, I think, a fair criticism if that is what we had been doing for like an hour. It's just talking about YouTubers, but we weren't. And, I can understand that it's really bizarre. Like, and I've had this happen to me, like you click on somebody's live stream out of pure curiosity and they're talking about you. That's a weird experience. I get that. So, like, I'm trying to be as fair as possible. I'm not sure why, but I am.
This is the thing that I find I get in a lot of trouble because I don't like measure my criticism about these people because they don't do it when they talk to us. Like we fall into this trap of and excuse me for if I'm getting heated, but this liberal sense of civility where we have to like be polite to these people that are jackasses. Like they don't care about who they hurt, and like I don't feel the need to like mollycoddle them if saying so hurts their feelings. Like if you Google thought slime, the first suggestion is thought slime debunked, and it's a bunch of people calling me a bunch of ableist slurs and like drawing me in Nazi uniforms. And like, if I can put up with that, someone else can put up with me saying, hey, maybe don't like, you know, erase the existence of trans people, or like, you know, like,
yeah. Get this, for a while, this isn't the case anymore, but for a while, the first result when you search Garrett on YouTube was a video by Bering in which I'm represented as a cartoon pig. Like, seriously. Like, that was people's first interaction. It's like, oh, a cartoon pig. Like, yeah. So, yeah, I feel that, definitely.
That's, I think the biggest response video anyone's done to me so far was also a Bering video. And it was for like just a little rant that I did about like believing like assault survivors, just generally, you know, like not really getting into a whole lot of specifics, but like talking about why I felt that way and, you know, this general sentiment. And Bering thought that that was a good video to cherry pick in the way that he does and sort of vaguely interrupt at unimportant parts. At one point, I think I used the phrase "witches aren't real" because at the time, especially, I was like, I'm not a very spiritual person at all. So I expressed that belief that like I don't think spirituality is real, and he clipped that, and he had this little bit in his video like that, and so half of the comments that I got from his subs were like really weird things about like, I'm a Wiccan and I'm very offended. And it's like, oh, I actually kind of like, I'm sorry. And then the other like 90%, not half, they was really overwhelmingly, the rest of the comments were Gwen raped me or some variant thereof. And as a survivor
Very
myself,
cool.
and as someone who knows a lot of those people, it's like you're going to deny that you had anything to do with that, Bering, and everybody else. I hate to even Beetlejuice him into this conversation, but like people deny that. Like when Carl Benjamin, I just knocked my microphone. Okay, there it is. I knocked my microphone and then I got real anxious. Okay, when Carl Benjamin tweeted that the thing at the person at the time that I don't want to get into right now, he tweeted, "I wouldn't rape you," and it's like people these days act like that's a meme, and like it just
it's
I'm
funny
sorry,
that
this got really heavy. It just really ticks me off.
I want to mention that the part of the thing that never became a meme is the fact that the woman that Sargon said that about received 200 rape and death threats within 24 hours.
I think 600.
Right, oh, 600, right, yeah. I do remember it was in the hundreds within one day. Yeah, and it's like, you know, that they always forget that part when they make it into a fucking meme. Yeah.
And it's so not.
Anyway, sorry,
all,
Christy,
Gwen,
if we blew up your spot.
That's fine.
I apologize for the thing.
Don't apologize. Fuck it. I'm really sorry that happened to you, Gwen, and I'm really sorry that we live in this shitty world. And like today, one of the first things that happened is I log on Twitter, and some rape apologist has sent just tweet after tweet after tweet after tweet at me about how drunken whores get what they get, basically, was his point. And you shouldn't be a drunken whore if you don't want to get what you get. And it's like this is the monster. This is the Frankenstein monster of the internet that we've created here, right? And it can't be uncreated. Like, now that we have, and I've said this again and again, that it isn't necessarily like we live in a different universe when we go online. We don't. It's still the real world. It's still people talking to people. But whereas I can't possibly go up to somebody in the real world and say, I wouldn't even rape you, bitch. I can sure as fuck do that online. And I can expect not only to do that, but if somebody says, that's fucking shitty, to have a whole lot of people come at me and say, oh, it's just the internet, it doesn't matter, and why are you making a big deal about this, and why are you being such a fucking snowflake about this? Even though, personally, as a rape victim, I don't want to fucking be harassed by random men. that I don't know and I don't know anything about. And I don't think that that's unreasonable.
Yeah, the internet is horrific for that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm glad to not be on Twitter anymore. I think it's a fucking hellscape, personally. Facebook isn't that much better, but at least most people have their actual names on there, so they're a bit less willing to be complete pieces of shit. Like, I don't know, a little bit anyway. Although it is amazing what you can get away with on Facebook. Like one time, I saw somebody just saying some horrendous things to Clementine Ford. She really brings the misogynist out of a lot of angry men. But so he was saying something just absolute fucking vile stuff, and I basically he was a New Zealander, I found out, and I basically just I asked him for his address and threatened to stab him, and then somebody reported that, one of his friends, and Facebook did nothing, and I was actually kind of surprised. I was like, I thought I'd get some kind of response for that, but apparently that's fine. So
I once got kicked off of a dog food page that advertised on my feed because I asked them what kind of food would make my dog strongest for dog fighting. And I said, I've got a pit bull and he's pretty big, and I just want to know what kind of food will make him like able to win in a fight. And they said that it violated their terms of service, and I think it's bullshit because this is what you go through as a pit bull owner, you know?
Yeah.
All right, wait. I wanted to say something kind of like jokey because I saw the guy that you were talking about, and I RT'd your post about it just so people could report it. But I remember like just now I was listening to you talk about that, and I was thinking this weird thought popped into my head, as weird thoughts often do when you talk about really weird things. And I just thought to myself, like, you know, it is a myth that most of these sexual assaults happen in like a dark alleyway and it's a complete stranger assaulting a woman. Yeah, but that only accounts like, for paradox. 10%. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's very insignificant. Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. Thank you though. It's it is interesting though that something the opposite happens online, where abuse towards women actually brings out a lot of anonymous strangers who then like repeat lines about sexual assault and stuff like that. I don't know. It's just like a weird. You're right, Garrett. It's a hellscape. It really is.
Well, it's the anonymity and then the sort of cover, the social cover that we provide for people by saying things like "Don't feed the trolls" or calling people snowflakes if they complain, or things of that nature, has made it into a place where a small number of sociopaths, and they've done the studies, these are actual sociopaths who go out and get kicks off of hurting people. Like, they like it, and there aren't a lot of places for you to just like hurt people in the world. But the internet is one of them. And nowadays, you can't function. You can't function as a professional person. You can't function as a basic, normal human individual without social media, without the internet. But you also have to open yourself up to massive amounts of abuse. And that's why, we have people killing themselves because they've been bullied and harassed. And there's no, like, I try to remember, I really do. And I have tried to be very careful about who I retweet and things like that, and things that I say, because you don't know if somebody has a significant depression. You don't know if somebody is like in a really bad mental space. You have no way of knowing that. But yeah,
that is I think this would be the first time I've decided before doing this hangout that I was going to mention this in this hangout, that this is the first time I've ever admitted this, but on a public internet forum. But I have a severe mental disorder, and it's horrible when people don't think about like that as a possible variable. They talk to me in a way, like kind of hurtful, aggressive way. And like, just for me, like that can really do a number on me and make me do horrible things to myself and things. And like, yeah, people don't even think for a second that even when they know that about me, that that could be a possibility. And I think that is one thing about the internet, is that it kind of tends to homogenize people and make people think about people as if they're like them and not like, I don't know how to describe what I'm saying, but yeah, I think there's a lot of like in real life interactions that never happens to me. Like people are actually nice about it and they care about it and stuff. But on the internet, that just flies out the window. It's the earliest available opportunity, and it is weird how that happens. I think it's a sort of way of dehumanizing people because of the anonymity and stuff. Yeah.
But at the same time, if someone is being so incredibly toxic that like the person that sent you those messages, for example, Christy, like if they're like, that might be the result of mental illness, but I don't think it's like something that should be condoned either way. And like, I would feel no compunction about like straight up telling that person, like, go fuck yourself. I don't,
I do. And I also reported that particular person because not only like there was all kinds of anti-Semitism, there was the whole mix, as there usually is. Let's be honest. I don't know where it starts, but once you sort of get into the hate.
Yeah, well, that's one thing I was going to say, is that there is no mental disorder that makes you hate people. There is none. Like there are mental disorders that can make you hate life and hate humanity, but not like specific groups of people that were born a certain way or something like that. It is never an excuse for that. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, well, speaking as someone who, I think I did a vlog about this, but I wanted to do like a full video because I've been trying to do more videos about mental health. I was in like a mental health advocacy group when I was in college, and I really miss talking about that stuff just like every other week, just getting together with people and having those really healthy chats, you know, because people could be like, they'll have like funny like life stories and different like life situations that they'll talk about. And it's really interesting. And you really get even sometimes a better grasp on yourself, hearing how other people go through similar things. And I got a diagnosis this summer for borderline personality disorder, and I just started another prescription, which this one is actually supposed to treat that specifically.
Okay, two things. As someone who has dealt with the disorder for 17 years now, it's the most false positive misdiagnosis, the most common one, like of all. So I would get a second opinion first. And then the second thing is there is no medication that successfully deals with any of the acute aspects of the disorder. So whoever's told you that there's medication that does that is wrong.
Yeah, well, it's treatment in the sense of like a specific kind of symptom in dealing with like, well,
like the most powerful symptom of BPD is emotional dysregulation, and there is no medication that can do anything to do with that, because it occurs in the brain too quickly. It occurs in the brain in like a fraction of a second, to the degree that you can't actually. It just brute forces its way through your mind. Basically, there's nothing you can do about it. All you can do about it is alter the way you react to it, and that can be done through talk therapy systems.
Yeah, I'm in DBT right now. We do a lot of that kind of stuff. But I was just saying, I get night terrors, and it's the kind of thing that I always have a really hard time remembering what exactly happens. But my girlfriend was recounting things to me recently, because like I'll have spasms or I'll kick her or something in her sleep. She notices that. I don't notice that. So this is mostly for that. But there's an aspect to the different doctors that I've talked to, and the kind of like situation that I'm going through, where I'm trying to learn to understand myself better. And given the time that I've taken so far, I feel comfortable saying that there's nothing about any like mental illness that I've ever experienced that would ever lead a person to specifically become a bigot.
Oh, well, I can think of one example, actually. I think a lot of... Okay. There's this political cartoonist online named David Dees, who developed pretty severe paranoid schizophrenia, and as he did, went down like an anti-Semitic rabbit hole. And people that know him have said that he wasn't like that before the disease kind of began affecting him. And I think in that particular case, if a disease that makes you misperceive reality such that like a shadowy group is controlling things, I think in that case there might be some overlap. But I by no means think that the majority of anti-Semites are, have some sort of mental disorder.
Yeah, because talking about this sort of stuff from a like inside looking out is kind of weird. But with the situation that I was in, the doctor recommended some of the medication that I have now because I'm in like a weird kind of state where I'm usually okay during the daytime, whatever the case is. Like I'm usually occupied enough, or previously my sleep schedule had been different. So as it happened, I was up really late working different jobs, and then I was sleeping during the morning. But now I'm trying to get out of that as sort of a way of like fighting with some of the symptoms of my depression. And then I remember talking about this with my psychiatrist that I'm seeing now, who I've only been seeing them for like a couple weeks, but or I guess now it's like a month. But she was really nice, but definitely gave me the sense that I was a little bit paranoid. And sometimes paranoia can seem like it's not that. And just talking to people who loved me about like some of the things that I would do, like keeping a baseball bat when I sleep, like that's not, a lot of people don't do that. And if they do, maybe they're in an extreme situation. But I'm really okay, and I understand that. But not all the wheels turn at all the right times of the day. And sometimes at night, I get extra paranoid. And, I'm one of those people walking into rooms and I have to look at all the corners and I have to like check behind me all the time. And it's one of those things.
The hardest part for me was after I was pregnant, because I had such, on top of my own particular issues, I had such severe postpartum that I really did not think I was going to make it. I thought I was done. Like, the world wasn't making sense, people weren't making sense, and you have this sort of weird feeling where you're walking around and you're like, I know that anybody looking at me thinks that a functioning human being is walking and talking to them, and it's not happening. Like, I am out of it, and at any minute, something could snap. And, like, knowing that that was true was such a devastation, like, on just who I am and everything. It's such a hard thing to sort of even explain to people. But at the same time, like, you still try to be a good person. If you are, like, even if you're sort of seeing things or hearing things that aren't entirely there, you're still trying.
Sorry to interrupt. I just want to clarify something that's happening in the chat. Somebody has confused CBT and DBT, because Gwen, you said DBT, right?
Yeah, DBT.
Yeah, that's actually really not anything like CBT. And CBT can be useful for various things about borderline. I've done a couple of years of it. Oh, not a couple of years, like a year and a half maybe. It can be useful, but DBT is something that's specifically made for the disorder by someone with the disorder. And it is brilliant and beautiful. And I did it for 3 years and it changed my life.
Oh, I'm glad.
A problem I often have when people tell me to get CBT is that acronym also means cock and ball torture. And you want to go to the right office for that one.
Well, I mean, DBT could be dick and ball torture, you know.
Oh no. maybe mine's a slow burn kind of deal.
Oh yeah, Carly has just mentioned that it is useful for treating other disorders too, and that is absolutely correct. DBT has spread from just being about borderline to being used for all manner of different things, and it is very useful from depression to bipolar disorder to anxiety and panic disorders to all kinds of stuff. It's great. Sorry to interject.
I always approach it as you know, this is the most on-brand way to look at mental illness, but you want a diversity of tactics. Like every little thing you can do can help a little. But you know, obviously within reason. Everybody got quiet. I think I might have said something fucked up.
No, I'm just typing.
The
Sorry.
audio, like the stream, like clipped a little bit, but you said diversity of tactics, right?
Yes. Yeah. I just think that like
it just cut the of, which is actually okay. Like I still get this.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people get fixated on like, I need to find the thing that's going to cure me. And I think that is like the objectively wrong way to look at mental illness treatment, because nothing is going to make you go from mentally ill to mentally healthy alone. It requires a lot of work and a lot of different, you know, lifestyle changes and all sorts of things that,
I don't think that mentally healthy is on the table for me. It's kind of like the way I see it is I have a form of mental diabetes. Like it's manageable. It's not.
But like a diabetic person can still be healthy. Like it's relative, right? Like
right.
If I will never not have depression, but I can mitigate the depression so that I'm healthy by my own standard.
Yeah, and that is exactly how it works with personality disorders as well, because at this stage in medical science, there is no cure for any of them, but there are treatments you can do that won't eliminate it from your brain, but they will make you able to live with it a lot better. And that's basically where I'm at, you know, after my 3 years of DBT and various other things. I still have it, and it's still just as potent in my brain as always, but I'm better at dealing with it now, you know. And I have coping strategies, coping skills that really work and have worked me consistently. And I think that is why I basically encourage anyone with the disorder to do DBT, because it's so good for that. It's not about making yourself normal, making yourself better. It's about making yourself more skillful.
And it's, you know, I mean, with time and with an end to all the stigma and prejudice that sort of accompanies this, hopefully things will get better, and there will be, like, I don't know what it would be like to live without the things that I live with. Like, it's so hard to even imagine that, which is weird. Like, I don't know, like, you know, some of the trauma things that I've had have made some things so incredibly difficult, and they happened at such a young age that somebody asked me the other day, well, what do you think you would have been like if this hadn't happened? And I didn't know what to say. Like, I don't have a memory of being like that. I don't have a memory of not having these problems, of not having PTSD kinds of symptoms. And
that's actually the interesting difference for me, because borderline tends to manifest in your late teens, 17 to 19, somewhere around there. And so I do have memories of being not like this. And it's kind of horrible because they're very clear memories. And, you know, I kind of feel a connection to that, but not. It's actually quite sad. But yeah, so I kind of wish I didn't, if anything.
I don't know, now we're rambling, I think, but
yeah, we kind of are.
See, this is what I don't like about this stream, is all we're doing is talking about the mental health issues of YouTubers.
Yeah, that's right. Just
we have to stop talking about other YouTubers and talk about the real issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But I do want to say, like, I totally feel what all of you are saying in different respects, and there's a sense that I was really afraid because I've had just incredibly intense emotional swings for my entire life. And when I was talking with, like, it started off, I was talking with a therapist that led me into a therapist that I did a whole bunch of testing with, and it was like, I've been through this whole long process, and at this point, I've just got this sense that, like, I'm a little bit scared, which is a little, I think it's kind of funny to me because I assumed that I would feel that way going into, like, see the first therapist or somewhere along there. But now that I'm in the part that's like, you know, I go to DBT on the week and I see a therapist who's affiliated with that program. And then, like, every month I go see the psychiatrist who works with the therapist, and that all kind of works in conjunction. I think at this point, the bit that worries me is that whether I've always been this way or whether I feel like I've become this way, I'm a bit concerned that I'm gonna, like, kind of change, and maybe I won't like the change. And I think that part of that comes out of, like, a mental space. It's not a healthy mental space or a healthy thought necessarily, but, like, I think part of it comes out of, like, having gone through negative changes, and then you're kind of like, well, what if the next thing is worse? Which is not how this treatment operates, actually. It really is, like, DBT for me is like taking my medicine. Like, I go there and it helps, and it helps easily as much as anything else, if not more. But I think there's a lot of, like, internal conflict. Let me just say that's what I'll say.
I think for me, like, when you have a mental disorder and you don't have any treatment for it or a treatment system, there's a really strong feeling of powerlessness that is really overwhelming and makes you just feel doomed. And then once you've actually got access to something that does help, that lifts. It may not lift right away, but it lifts over time to the point where you actually feel like you've got it under control. You're still affected by it. You'll still do things you'll regret later. You'll still have issues. You'll still do all the same things, but not as much and not as badly. And you just start feeling more confidence about yourself. And, like, you know, for YouTube, for example, I never would have been able to do that, you know, years ago. And, you know, it just goes to, like, the fact that I was able to do it at all. And also like, I did eventually delete my channel, but the fact that it was up for as long as it was, I had impulses to delete that thing every day, you know, like, but I didn't do it, you know, until I did. But, you know, like, I was impressed that it lasted that long. Yeah, so, I mean, and it never would have even started years ago. So I would say, yeah, you'll change, but you might change for the better, and that's probably just as likely as changing for the worst. So, and then there's the wheel thing analogy that people use for disorders like bipolar and borderline, where there's a lot of up and down. Where, you know, if you're strapped to the outside of a wheel, sometimes you're in the dirt, and other times you're looking at the stars. And I think that's really what it's like. And, you know, every downturn has an upturn, and yeah, to just not let it try not to let it get to you, the chaos. The saying that I find helpful is this too shall pass. I think is very, very important for anyone who deals with strong emotional fluctuations. You know, they come on quick, but they don't last that long. So, yeah.
I used to say all the time in the bad times, like, I'm just riding out the trip.
That's interesting, actually. Yeah,
I had a therapist who I'm not seeing anymore, but who was part of a program that I was in previously, who had a phrase. He said, "Ride the wave," and he used that phrase because he liked the calming idea of the ocean waves, like, going in and coming out and all that. But and I also quite like that. So that's usually where my mind goes whenever I'm in one of those situations, and it's like it's the bottom pit of the bad times. I sometimes even would just lay there, and I just get a sense of where I am. Like, that's my first thing is I'm like, I'm not moving. Here's where I am. Like, I take stock of, like, my body and my mind, and that.
The observe skill, the DBT skill, observe. So that when you get dysregulated, you do observe. And when you just take a step back and you're like, what are the emotions that are going through my head right now? Why are they going there? And then just basically just let them go and let them take their course. Yeah, the other thing I was going to mention, Gwen, is that a therapist I had once, a DBT therapist, said something to me that always stuck with me that I think is really, really useful, which is because DBT can be very hard to do. It takes a lot out of you. It can be very emotional. And he said that having BPD is like being in hell and everything's on fire, and DBT is like a ladder that you can climb to get out of the fire, but the ladder is also on fire. So every rung burns your hands, but with every rung, you're less on fire than you were before. It's that's
really great, actually. Because that same therapist that I mentioned, he had a fire analogy as well. He said, you have to be willing to go into this burning building with me. And he would start a lot of our sessions like that. We were in a group, and it fluctuated between like 4 and 6 people. But yeah, that kind of thing, it's good to normalize how, I don't know exactly what words to use, but like scary or strange or just like impossible sometimes, the little things about that can seem. Like they'll give you a little sheet and they'll be like, we want you to fill this out. And like, you take it home and you look at what's on it. If you look, I mean, it takes you a while to look, and then you look at what's on it and it's like, Jesus, it feels like that's teetering on the edge of the pit. And then you kind of step back and you're like, okay, maybe I can like do 1 now, and maybe I'll come back later and I'll do 1 later. My girlfriend has this process where she leads me through 5 things. It's something she got from her therapist that my therapist also recommended she help me with, which is whenever something's really hard for me, especially emotionally, we do 5 things. We see if we can like do 5 things for a start. And then oftentimes that makes it easier to just keep going.
I do it with 1. If I'm having trouble like editing a video, I'll just be like, you know what? You don't have to edit tonight, but just open Premiere. And then if I open Premiere, the rest of it is I just start going.
What gets with me with editing is that I'll be really good, I'll work really hard for ages, and then I'll get to a specific point that just, I don't know, like it feels like it more laborious, even though objectively it isn't. Like for example, I won't know what to put on visually, which is an issue you don't have because you're on camera, but like for me, I have to fill up. Yeah, right. Yeah.
I still have that problem quite a bit. And I had it even more when I used to do cartoons.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. And so like, when I get to a point where I don't know what to put on and I can't think of anything, I just shut down and I close the program and I don't know what to do and it stresses me out. And yeah, like for example, and the other thing that does it is, this is a bit technical, but Premiere's non-compatibility with MKV files, like, oh God, like I can't find a non-MKV, and then I have to do the thing where I do the conversion, and oh God, that slows things down enormously for me as well.
Here's the question. Maybe one of you guys can actually answer this for me. When I take my videos, and I'm sorry that this is going to be super boring for everyone in chat. This is really inside baseball. I always want to treat the audio in Audacity. And the only way that I know how to do that, because I'm recording mic in camera, because I do not have the fucking patience to line them up afterwards. I just don't. I've done it before. I hate doing it. What I've been doing is taking the movie files, converting them in VLC to MP3s, and then opening them in Audacity. Is there an easier way to do that?
I don't do that. I don't do that exporting to Audacity at all. I'm not the right person to ask. But I will say that I work in the film industry, right? And I got over my dislike for syncing by having a job as an assistant editor where all you do all day is sync audio and video clips together just 1,000 times a day for like, I did that job for... I did that job for like over a year, and that just burned that out of my brain. Now I'm just so quick. I'm just like, boom, done. And that was all. Every one of those, by the way, they were not clapped. There was no sync point. They were all that was all me having to like do mouth shapes and stuff. So I got incredibly good at it.
Wow.
That's really cool. Yeah. I have a thing that I just started doing because I started recording the other day a response video, and then I literally did it in one take because I was like, I'm not gonna. It took me so damn long to set up the lights to actually make my crappy little camcorder look nice that I was like, I am not doing this bullshit again. Because literally, like, I film in this one room basically, or I walk around with my phone. So like that, this is what you get, and basically. You do more work with like some of the audio editing than I do because when I record things on my phone, I just upload it straight to YouTube. I'm like, fuck you. You're gonna watch this out of my phone. You're gonna like it. Like if you click on the one of the vlogs and it says vlog, you know what you're getting.
That's
you're
true.
already down for it. But
what I do with the lights, Gwen, is
I just leave them Sorry.
Like
you just.
I got so annoyed like taking down the lights and putting them back up, and I had too many situations where I would take down the lights and put everything away, and then I would sit down on my computer and I would look at what I shot and it was fucked up, and I'd have to reshoot it, and then I'd have to get all the lights out again. So I just leave them up now, and this backdrop it's up all the time.
Do you sleep in that room?
Yeah.
Weird question. Yeah. But no, because that's my problem is I sleep in this room. So like I feel like I'm gonna get up out of bed one morning and just kick the light and it's gonna fly and it's gonna shatter and then I'm gonna have a whole moment.
Oh, I've got them like securely fastened to I have like bolt clamps and shit. Like I'm not fucking around.
I was worried that my mic wasn't going to work for this hangout because the other day I kicked the stand over and it smashed on the ground quite harshly, and I was like, "Oh god!" But it works apparently. So I haven't heard anyone saying, "Hey, you sound like garbage." So I think it still works.
Yeah, you sound good. No, for me, like I took a tub, like a what do you call it? Like one of those things that you put.
Like
your crap in.
So you did the mini audio booth.
I did the mini audio booth because it was driving me insane. And it was like I was never going to put another video up again because I would hear it. I would hear it as I was trying to process just this little bit of like echo or this tinniness or whatever. And I was like, I can't function knowing that that's going up on my channel. Like it's a bad, terrible thing.
I actually have an audio booth, a semi-anechoic chamber in my garage. Not for YouTube, but it was originally for actors to do ADR for my short films. But it's really useful for YouTube.
This is gonna make me look like a total fucking maroon, but I had this Blue Yeti, this lovely Blue Yeti that my girlfriend helped get for me. I actually did I even did an unboxing vlog on YouTube because I was so excited about the goddamn Blue Yeti that yeah. So there's like a bunch of dials on it and stuff, and I was like, shit, I don't know what fucking dials are. And I noticed one of the dials got some pictures, and I was like, what does this do when I click it different ways? And I actually tried, and then I was like, I don't know what the name for any of this stuff is. Let's Google it. So I Googled like, what does the dial do? And it turns out you could set up your mic so that there's way less feedback if it's not in the
cardioid
setting. The it's got a setting where it picks up from one direction. Yeah.
Cardioid. Yeah. Oh well, the cardioid is when it detects in a sort of not quite 180, bit more than 180 sort of sphere around the mic, for like a 30 centimeter radius or something like that.
Gwen, do you want? Sorry to interrupt.
No, go.
Gwen, do you want me to make you feel better about that?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
I also have a Blue Yeti that I'm using right now, and I read the instruction manual from front to back. And I knew what all of the settings did. And for the first, I would say, 4 months of my YouTube channel, I was speaking into the back of the microphone.
Oh, no.
Mm-hmm. And I was always like, why the fuck is my audio always so quiet? Feels like it picks up stuff from everywhere else in the room, but where I'm speaking. And did not like put two and two together. Like the thing you're saying is that you're doing it backwards. It's a real like fucking Homer Simpson moment.
It did actually make me feel a little bit better. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, I got one.
Slime.
The reason I have this microphone is because the previous one I dropped in my dog's water bowl. So
well, that's just a terrible accident.
I suppose, but I mean, I was being incredibly absent-minded at the time. So
I assume you were interviewing your dog?
Yes, and she was not cooperating with the interview. It was a disaster.
Yeah, I bought a $600 camera and I laid it on my desk. And the very first day that I had it, the cats were very curious and decided they wanted to learn about gravity with the new camera, and knocked that right off the desk. But it was fine. So I was not pleased. What are you going to do?
Cats.
Oh my God.
My husband grew up in a house without any pets. And we have a cat and we have a dog, and they're both like rescues. They're both kind of animals we, you could say, lucked into, or you could say new people that were heroin addicts who weren't taking care of their pets, or, either way. And like, so my husband is always like, cat is up on the counters. What do you do about that? Nothing. Like, there is no thing to do about that thing. Like, how do you teach them not to be up on the counters? You don't?
You can, but it just requires like far more patience than just learning to live with the fact that they're walking on your counters with the same paws that they walk around in the litter box with.
When I was I think a junior in college, my roommate and I took in a stray cat for a short period of time because there's a lot of strays in that town. And this one was looking really rough. And we wanted to kind of like just rehab her a little bit and then see how she did with either, honestly, just like setting her up somewhere else. And nobody was really like, we definitely want a cat because we're in college and we're in like a really secure living situation right now. So that was like a fun couple of months of adventuring. But we ended up giving her to an actual good, like, humane shelter, which was cool. But it like took us forever. So we have this cat that we don't really know, this strange cat living in our house. And she was really sweet. Except this one night, it was like the second night, because the first night I slept with my door open. That was a mistake because middle of the night, and like I said, I was a rough sleeper before I started taking this medicine. And she pounced on my chest and then just shot off. And I flipped out, not because the cat pounced on my chest, just because I had no idea what was going on. The second night, I shut my door so she wouldn't like come in and, meow at me or like try to sleep with me and then jump on me, which was deceitful. And I hated it, except it was really cute. I had been drinking with some friends, and I had left some wine glasses to dry on the counter. And in the middle of the night, I'm awoken by this crashing noise. And my first thought was, holy shit, what happened? And my second thought was, oh, you motherfucker, like you ruined my wine glasses. So then I learned not to do that anymore, because honestly, that was as much on me as it was the cat.
My cat likes to eat plastic bags, but
I had a dog like that. They used to come out whole the other end. It was amazing.
Yeah, little shrink wrapped poops. It's but she knows that if she does that, I will get up and like chase her. So if she feels she hasn't been fed sufficiently recently, she knows how to get me off the couch. And then she just looks at me like, well, you're up now. Might as well give me some food.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I'm not a cat person at all, really. But I have to respect cats because cats are the unofficial animal of the left, and particularly of anarchism.
Yeah, because they don't work with the cops.
Exactly.
I saw this great.
Cats famously hate cops. Yeah.
I might have even retweeted it because it was such a good tweet, but I saw this tweet and it just said, if dogs knew what cops were, they wouldn't work with cops. And I was like, that's 100% true.
Yeah.
It's like cats famously are burglars, so they would never work with the police.
That's true. But there's so many cats in anarchist symbolism, you know, Sabbath cat, General Strike cat, this one. And there's the direct action cat, you know, direct action gets the goods, and there's various others.
There's a cat from Night in the Woods.
Oh, no, yeah, that's good because you could have the baseball bat.
I haven't seen Night in the Woods.
I haven't actually played it yet, but I had a patron who requested a drawing in the style of Night in the Woods. So,
oh, it's a game. I haven't played it then. All right. Yeah, I've been pretty out of touch with gaming except Switch stuff.
It's on Switch.
Oh yeah. Okay, I'll give it a check. I'll check it out then.
I think Laura played that one. I'll have to ask her if she'd ever did a Let's Play of that because I would definitely upload it to my channel, and then everybody could vicariously play it and hear her lesbian commentary on what allegedly is like a semi-queer kind of game.
All games are if you play them right.
That's true. That's good.
Like I like Queer Tetris, for example.
Very much Queer Tetris.
Checkers. I don't think I have to tell you why.
You know,
Checkers is a very ANCOM game.
Oh God.
Well, it's red and black.
There's an old story. This is so random and will only show that I've had wine that I'm bringing this up. But like in the Rome versus Persia wars, which I know you're all fans of, like there's this old story about so the Persians sent their spies to check out what the various Greeks were doing, and because of different things, like Spartans spend the night before war braiding their hair.
They do,
and Athenians do a lot of like homoerotic leapfrogging, jumping kinds of games for some reason, because I don't know, I guess it's good for before you're about to go into battle. You just sort of play leapfrog with other dudes.
You playfully stretch with your comrades.
Exactly. That's what you do. And so basically they reported back and say, well, they're being homoerotic and braiding each other's hair.
They're being fucking gay. What is it? I want to join that army.
It is amazing how many right-wing arguments are debunked by just referencing the Romans. For example, that whole thing about how, you know, soy boys and all that crap. Like the Roman gladiators ate vegan diets, which included a lot of soy, and they weren't weak. So, you know, maybe shut up about that. And yeah, like
otherwise it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Apart from every detail of it being bullshit, it's great.
Yeah, no. I think that's what their concept of like Sparta, for example, really would be. Like it's just like incredibly like hyper masculine dark fantasy type stuff.
Yeah, and it's also amazing how many like people in the far right will use Spartan symbolism and stuff, considering they're anti-abortion, and Spartans are quite famous for like being cruel to babies, like newborn babies. I suppose they don't care once it's come out.
They did that as a form of eugenics, so
that's
cool with
true.
that. Like,
actually, that's a good point. Yeah, yeah. Yes, you never hear right-wing people complaining about the Nazis' forced abortion program.
Yes, you do, but they leave the word forced out. When they want to make a comparison and say the Nazis were actually on the left, they always talk about how Hitler was pro-abortion and leave out the detail that they were the forced abortion of Jewish people.
Yes, Jewish people, people with disabilities, gay people, Romanis,
And to that point, like I think this conversation has gone completely random, so fuck it. But we have been terrible forced sterilization type people in the Americas. Like, we are super eugenicists about going in and saying, yeah, fuck you, you're not having any babies because we said so.
I just have to quickly chime in due to a thing in the chat. Somebody said, mentioned the whole stereotype about Hitler being a vegetarian. He was not a vegetarian, actually. He didn't eat meat that often, especially not at lunchtime. But if you read Albert Speer's book, I can't remember the name of it right now, but I will look it up. Albert Speer, Hitler's architect and arms dealer, he wrote a book, and he spent a lot of time with Hitler, and especially at times when other people in his inner circle weren't around. And he observed them eating many meals, and including lots of meat of all kinds. So Hitler definitely ate meat.
And also the main reason that he didn't eat much meat was just because he had gastrointestinal problems.
Right, right.
Fun
and
historical
wanted to
fact
look
that,
good in those leather shorts that he liked to wear.
No, yeah. If one thing is known about Hitler is that he was definitely a handsome man. I think.
I guess if you look at it really far away in those old grainy photographs, sure.
Yeah, he's just he's got a silly little mustache, and I think that drives people wild.
Charlie Chaplin, steal his look.
Yeah.
The book was called Inside the Third Reich, by the way. It's an interesting read, but Albert Speer does spend a lot of time trying to make you feel sympathetic towards him, and I don't. So
no.
Yeah.
Not a big fan.
No.
Like, if there's one person that we can just all decide needs no sympathy, needs no, you gotta hand it to him, like, needs nothing. Nothing at all.
Christy, he did kill Hitler.
No. Just no to Hitler. That's our one thing.
I wanted to say that because I mean, this is a terrible thing to bring up, but like it is so true about what we were just talking about. With respect to like genocidal movements and forced abortions and eugenics, like, I don't think that when it comes to the victims of your genocide, you're bound to be particularly like, oh no, we can't kill this person, she's pregnant. It seems to me like there's actually a lot of great potential to abuse that in the wrong direction, and then like, so this idea that like the Nazis were left-wing because they forced abortions, which is patently absurd besides anyways, but like, no, I mean, I think most people who commit mass murder are just down with forcing abortions because they're not like going to ask everybody they kill. That just seems, I don't know, or they're not going to care.
And we should also point out that the whole forced abortions, eugenics things is still on the books in the United States. Like, there was a Supreme Court decision upholding it, and I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's Bell versus, I can't remember. If somebody in the chat has it, please put it up. I can't remember the exact name, but it was a young lady who she was raped by her uncle, and they not only, and they sterilized her against her will. And they said, well, it was because she was mentally ill. She didn't want that. And, her point was that, no, I wasn't mentally ill. I was raped by my uncle. And my aunt didn't want people to know about that. So there was this whole thing that happened with that. And they upholded that for the good of humanity, apparently, and it's still on the books, and it's never been taken down because of the Supreme Court. So we should keep in mind it's still there, and it could happen. sadly.
Philosophy Tube did a really great video that came out. I think it was on Friday, just the other day, and it was about like Marxism and
Oh, I haven't
like,
watched that yet.
witch hunts and stuff like that. And it's really, I won't spoil anything about it, but it was really neat to me to see, because that video that fits all of my interests. Like, I didn't used to be a particularly spiritual person, and now I've taken my life on a wild ride where there are no rules anymore, and I'm very much enjoying it. Because I used to be very like straight-laced about those kinds of things, and I've just kind of decided that I have enough things to worry about that I don't even really want to hold on to all of those older beliefs anymore. Like, I've already, going from being a liberal to being an anarchist over the course of like some odd number of years, like, I mean, it makes me want to rethink things at least. And I saw that video come up, the notification for the premiere for it, and I was like, this is all of my interests. And I watched it, and it was so refreshing to hear someone talk about like the kind of like rhetorical and philosophical end of like witchcraft, and how it's like historically been affiliated with like Native women especially, but also with like women's movements and things like that. It's just really, it's really cool to finally hear things like that, because that's something that I get a lot as a problem with a lot of these like quote unquote rational people in a lot of these quote unquote rational movements, is that they call, not just that they call themselves that, and they often aren't, but that it's kind of a masculine persona that they don a lot of the time, or in some cases a capitulation to that persona. And I just, like, there's something so antagonizing about it.
Yeah, one thing I find is that the anti-theist types tend to be quite closed off with regard to learning about some stuff. And like, to me, like, that's not rational. Like, there's a difference with, like, you know, I can study Christianity for 20 years and not be a Christian or believe anything about Christianity. Like, that's, you know, that's being open-minded. That's being, you know, intellectually curious. And I find, like, if you go too far down the anti-theist rabbit hole, you close yourself off to a lot of things and sort of eliminate possible avenues of thought and belief and stuff. Like, yeah, and there's this whole thing, I don't believe anything. It's like, no, everybody believes stuff. Like, everybody has beliefs that they can't actually prove. Like,
yeah, that's one motherfucker of a red flag. I don't believe anything.
Exactly. Anyone who says that
don't want to identify your beliefs.
Well, and
it's also a belief. That is a belief.
Yeah, true. But there are people who say that tend to be quite, like, lack self-awareness about the, you know, and think. So yeah, like, I mean, I think being a Buddhist has helped me not go down that rabbit hole, and I'm lucky that I became a Buddhist early on, because I think I avoided all that stuff, and that could have potentially derailed me quite badly, I think. Because I do have, you know, like, when I see evangelical Christians doing horrible things, it does, you know, hit that thing in my brain where I'm like, oh, I hate this. But, you know, I always hold back. I always pull back from that and think, no, you know, these people don't represent everyone who has religious beliefs and religious affiliations. And to go down that hole is just a fallacious bullshit. So yeah, I think
first of all, I encourage people to check out Angie Speaks.
Yes.
Who is, I recently had a conversation with her, and we touched on a lot of these things, and she's coming from a position where she actually said that her spirituality and this sort of nature-based spirituality and ecologically based spirituality led her to leftism. And I think that's really cool. And I think that people should appreciate that, especially in our world, we could use a little ecological spirituality, right? And I also have a video about Wiccanism for atheists. If people want to check that out, they should go look at that. So
this is barely on topic, but I was watching The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, the Netflix show, last night, and in the first, it's quite a progressive show, and in the first episode of that, they form a women's group called Wicca, women's intersectional. I can't remember what the rest of it stands for, but it's called Wicca, and I just thought that was amusing. Sorry, it's a good show.
You guys want to know an embarrassing thought slime fact?
Always.
Yes.
When I was like 13, I went through a Wiccan phase, and because of that, I refused to play the game Banjo-Kazooie because of its negative depiction of witches. That was my first political engagement.
I love that. That's actually really cute.
I like that. Like, I was mad at Supernatural, the TV show, for a while because, you know, they're a little negative.
I remember writing letters to the people that made the Blair Witch campaign, Blair Witch Project. Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that is the third one. The Blair Witch campaign.
It's a movie from like 1999 or whatever. I wouldn't feel 2000. I wouldn't feel too bad that you got a name wrong.
It's also a name like
it's a terrible name.
I didn't really like.
No, I didn't either. I liked aspects of it, but later movies that came along did the similar thing way better. So
I would say that there's actually one movie that came before it that did a similar thing way better. It's called Incident at Lake County.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I haven't heard of that.
Blair Witch, but with aliens, and it did everything Blair Witch did, but did more things. Like they had interviews with fake experts who would come up and talk about how it's impossible to fake the footage. And before there were found footage movies, like, you know, me, 11-year-old me watching this, I was just scared out of my fucking mind.
In an old town that I lived in, there used to be like a Blair apartment complex. That was the name of it. But whenever my girlfriend and my now ex-girlfriend would drive past it, I'd call it the Blair housing projects. And I have nothing but positive memories of the Blair Witch Project because of that. It always makes me smile.
I watched a parody film, like a kind of scary movie type thing about Blair Witch Project. It was a collection of short films all taking the mickey out of Blair Witch Project in different ways. And one of them was called the Blair Underwood Project. Blair Underwood's like a Black American B movie actor. And I found it so funny, and I found him so funny because I started getting into his stuff, and he's just a hilarious actor, that I called my production company Under the Woods, named after him. So just wanted to.
That's also a hella cool name. I like that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had to wind that production company up in 2015. Like, the reason I started doing YouTube is because I hurt my back in 2015. And I couldn't work in the industry anymore. And then the tax year ended, and I had to wind the company up. So it's gone now, that company, sadly. I still have all the gear, though, all the stuff from it. So
that's cool.
It's a little bit overkill for doing YouTube, like 3 light stands, and actually I've got 4 lights. You know, it's just like way too much stuff. But you know, it's all good.
One of these days, I really have to go to New Zealand.
It's a nice place. Yeah, not all of it, but good big chunks of it are awesome.
Like I've been to Australia, and there was like a layover in New Zealand, which was so. They really are a lot more different than people give them credit for. Yeah,
I think we've got a lot of things in common. Like, we're both part of the same Asia Pacific region. But yeah, there's a lot more casual racism in Australia, and I think it's all down to the differing pasts of the two countries. And also it's down to who came here, who the colonialists were, you know. If you look at when Australia was colonized, because it's not all prisons. That's a stereotype. There were a lot of free colonies, like Adelaide, founded, and they had nothing to do with prison at all. But if you look at when New Zealand was colonized, it was in the 19th century, late 19th century, and that was when it started. And it was people who were part of progressive liberal movements who were getting screwed over by the British government and wanted to set up their own country, basically. So that's why New Zealand is a bit more like liberal than Australia, well, a lot more liberal than Australia and various other Western countries. And you can see this in the laws that were passed here early on. You know, the early laws, they're all quite left-wing. And even today would be quite progressive in some countries. Like, for example, we've got the Maori seats in Parliament. They're seats that can only go to Maori elected officials, Maori parliamentarians. They can't be filled by anybody else. So they just guarantee representation to Maori people.
You're racist.
Yeah, that's anti-white. Yeah. But yeah, stuff like that, and the women getting the vote here first and stuff like that. It has resulted over the years in us becoming quite a different place.
Is it analogous to like the difference between Canada and the United States, would you say?
Yeah, I would. Yep. And also like states within America being different to other states as well. Like, there's some pretty progressive states in America that really would be better served not being part of the country and making their own. Like, I'm a strong advocate of California breaking
Radical
off.
leftist calls for civil war.
Yeah, totally.
The problem is California and Massachusetts being on opposites.
Yeah, it is that. Yeah, you're right. It's all coastal. It makes it quite awkward.
Because we have, Massachusetts was the first state to recognize gay marriage, and we recognized it literally years before anybody else did.
Yeah, usually with progressive law reform, there's always like an American state that has done it before any country. Yeah.
And then now we're doing sort of this trans bill that's in our upcoming election, which I would like to remember exactly the wording of, but it's sort of protecting trans rights in advance of whoever else would, I don't know, want to take them away. Who would want that? But yet we're doing it. But it's just one of those other things that we're doing. And the good thing about that, is that a success in one area can lead to successes in other areas, because people look at it and I think California was a problem because it was on the other side of the United States. But there were a lot of states sort of around us that after gay marriage got passed and had been a year or two, they started passing it as well. Because they were like, we noticed weirdly that Massachusetts hasn't had a single fucking problem. And they're fine. And the world didn't break there, even though gay people were getting married. So I think
you guys had one problem, and he tried to share himself with the rest of the country.
In Massachusetts? What is that? What are you referring to?
Mitt Romney was their governor.
Yes. Yes, it was Romney care long before it was Obamacare.
Yeah, I was always so critical of him for that bullshit. I was born in Massachusetts. It's so wild that he was all about this, it's Obamacare. And then Barack Obama brought it up in a debate. He was like, didn't you sign something? Well, he didn't say it like that, but he was way more eloquent than I am. But he was like, didn't you sign something like that? And Romney was like, nah. Don't worry about it. I didn't.
One of my favorite things about Mittens, I don't know if you guys remember in 2012, one of the last days of his campaigning, he took his staff out to Wendy's to get some food, and when he went to the counter, he looked at the menu and he looked confused for a solid 2 minutes, and then he looked at the cashier and he said, I'd like a cheeseburger and a baked potato, please. And that is just the fucking, you could not have done a better job of convincing me you've never eaten at a Wendy's in your fucking life.
My favorite Mitt Romney thing was when he was giving some speech and he was trying to relate to a rural community, and there were a lot of farmers there. I think they were representing some union of some sort, and I don't remember at the time. I was incredibly politically illiterate. I mean, in comparison, and he was trying to relate to them, and the news played this clip over and over again, and I loved it It was him singing Old MacDonald Had a Farm.
Oh,
And then
yeah, I saw
he's
that.
gesturing to the crowd. He goes, E-I-E-I-O. And then it's burned into my brain.
Yeah. That was one of the most awkward politician clips I think I've ever seen. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
I've seen larger bits of that speech, and the whole thing.
I like the speech when he's trying to convince a crowd that corporations are people. That was a good one. And he looks so like confused that they don't agree with him. It's like,
but like that one's especially funny because it's a failure of messaging, because what he's trying to say is technically true. Like there is corporate personhood in the United States, but you would never phrase it that way because it makes you sound like a lunatic. Like yeah.
Well,
and
his argument Massachusetts, it's a very different thing with Mitt Romney, because there was this thing called the Big Dig, and it was the biggest waste of taxpayer money like ever. Like in terms of actual just like doing the math, the Big Dig was just a fucking disaster. And he was in charge of the government for most of that period that this was all going on. And it was just, this is the party of, I don't know, fiscal responsibility that they tell me. But like, this was just people taking money and just shoving it up their ass and then yanking it back out again and throwing it in the sea. Like, that's what the Big Dig was. Like, it was just sort of like supposed to be building a road or building some tunnels, but basically what they did was just, they would take money and give it to other people and give it to other people and give it to other corporations and give it to other people and do nothing but just pass money around and not build roads.
Big Dig?
Yeah, you should look this up someday.
Was that just to be 100% fair to everyone involved? Was that a name assigned by the people who wanted it to happen or not?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. See, it just goes to show you how much of a difference, like, I don't know, 5-10 years can make in political rhetoric. Because if someone in mainstream media called something the Big Dig now, a lot of weird stuff would happen after that. And there's a lot of ways in which the world has gotten a bit worse, but there's a lot of ways in which there's some parts of the world I'm okay with.
Like, to be fair though, that would only be a story for 24 hours, because then the next major disaster would happen that would supplant it.
The bigger dig.
Yeah, the really big dig. Yeah. To me, I think that is the real hallmark of the Trump era, more than anything else, is that these stories that come up that would be fucking huge deals in any previous administration, they just go by the wayside because there's so many things.
He openly called himself a nationalist like a week ago.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
And that was like 2 weeks after we found out for sure that like his entire business was based in fraud.
That was the thing I was going to bring up, because that would have been a massive scandal if it wasn't for all the other massive scandals around Trump. That story should have been.
Come to think of it, he literally said that he was in love with Kim Jong-un.
Yeah.
Imagine the conniption these people would have if Obama had said, "I'm in love with Kim Jong-un."
Well, that's what's really funny about it, because the thing that I can't stand is all of the really homophobic representations of Donald Trump. But the aspect of it that I find really interesting is that, like, eventually, I assume, we're going to find out whether that continues after this, or whether this is just like weirdly a Trump thing, and then somehow people are going to attempt to go back to something that we thought was normal.
I don't feel like there's going back. Like, I feel like it's
It's interesting actually, like talking about some of the things that Trump has done and looking at, is this going to become the norm now, or is it going to revert? Things like not having to produce your tax returns, and things like remaining in control of large businesses while president. You got to think that the next Republican president is going to try that. I mean, why wouldn't he? So it's interesting going to be what things stick and what don't. It's going to be.
And I think that a lot of Trump was started with Bush, and
Yes.
Trump makes Bush look better. But if we hadn't let Bush get away with so many fucking things, Trump wouldn't happen.
And
I
let me
would
add to that. Just one thing, real quick. If we had held Obama's feet to the fire to walk back some of the things that George Bush had done, then I think Trump would be in a much less strong position to do the things he's doing now.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, like, people say that Trump is worse than Bush, and I objectively, George Bush did more harm to the world than Trump has yet. But having said that, he was president for 8 years, and it's only been 2 so far. So who the hell knows what Trump's going to do? But
speaking of future presidencies, Garrett, I just want to say real quick, the phrase "the next Republican president" just
terrifies you.
Who
the hell is that going to be? Holy crap!
Well, what barrel are we going to reach in to pull out that snake? Like, I don't get it.
When I had to think who could be worst, who could be the worst possible choice, I came up with Roy Moore. I don't know if that is
Alex Jones.
Jesus.
No. Sheriff
I've got
Sheriff Joe
Arpaio. I was gonna say Ben Shapiro would be the actual
ding ding.
Is he old enough? You have to be 35 to be president.
I don't. It's the funny thing about really angry white guys is I never have any idea how old they actually are. So it's like
he dresses like a grandpa. So.
But he looks
and he talks like
one.
Well, I'm sorry, he gets paid by grandpas to talk about grandpa things.
Here's the thing, okay, because now after the mosque shooter and this recent bomb guy being a big Ben Shapiro fan, is he going to get any blowback from this? The fact that he's any at all?
The shooter. Wasn't it the guy who shot up the movie theater? Wasn't he also a big Ben Shapiro fan? Or am I thinking
was
of a
he?
different?
I'm not
there was
sure.
There was some shooter that talked about how much he liked Ben Shapiro, and Ben Shapiro went off about how he's not responsible for the actions of lunatics.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I remember that now because I think he had quoted Ben Shapiro at some point. Something that he had said in even a tweet. I can't remember. It was really. I'll actually have to look into that again because that was a really huge indictment of Shapiro just in terms of the material consequences of the things that he says.
I thought that was Alex Bissonnette. Was that? Am I wrong? The mosque shooter.
He definitely did do
he
did do vlogs and stuff. That guy.
I know I brought it up in a video I did about, or not about Ben Shapiro, but talking about Ben Shapiro. But I can't remember off the top of my head who it was.
And this most recent bomber was a big Shapiro fan. So that's why I'm sort of saying, is anybody going to look at Ben Shapiro and say, fuck it, just tone it down a bit, bro?
Someone in the chat. Someone in the chat mentioned Charlie Kirk as a comparison to Ben Shapiro. And it's interesting with Charlie Kirk because Turning Point USA is honestly way more extreme than people tend to realize. Some of the stuff they put out in their memes, it's really far right. Holy crap.
Garrett, how dare you? He lives like a capitalist every day. Okay? What are your values?
I mean, as much as I also want to yell at Cenk Uygur, that was hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
He got him.
Yeah, I mean, the Cenk Uygur, he's the kind of guy that he can dunk on the right, but that doesn't make him right. It doesn't make him correct, It's possible to point out someone else's is wrong while also you're wrong. Yeah. I think that's the key to people like him.
Yeah, well, I imagine I would really like Cenk Uygur if he wasn't like in charge of this whole business where he told other people what to say or what not to say and stuff like that. And like if he wasn't like as rich as he is, like if Cenk Uygur was just the weird guy that you saw at the bar all the time and he had no real power, and also the world wasn't as fucked up as it is, I would love Cenk Uygur. Like he would be very innocent.
Yeah, you see, the problem with someone like him is that you kind of think in the back of your mind that if Young Turks blew up, he would easily fall into the billionaire role without any trouble, you know. Like, and like as much as he can like shit talks billionaires, he would love to be one of them. I get that feeling. So like,
he would be like a Warren Buffett style billionaire who like occasionally throws people a bone, and so they go, "Oh no, he's cool." He said that his maid doesn't get paid enough, so he's cool.
What was it about him that he said something specific where he was like, "I'm a socialist," and something about how he paid his workers or something like that?
Yeah,
I don't know. And I was like, man, that's not you're not here with us.
Yeah, no. If you pay someone a wage, you're a socialist. That's
how it works.
I live like a socialist every single day, Cenk.
I still can't get over Elon Musk calling himself a socialist.
That's just a turd.
Yeah, fucking Musk, man.
You know, someone really smart on my timeline pointed out that he had that tweet about like cat girls where he like had a picture of an anime cat girl. And it was like, that's the cat girl that he wanted to be or something like that. And like someone pointed out that like people were, you know, retweeting it to dunk on him, but there's something potentially kind of insidious about it a little bit, because I mean, maybe it's genuine, but maybe it's like him kind of fucking with people a little bit. And if he is using like things trans people tweet about to do that, then it's like, oh, well, I can't laugh at this anymore because I'm the joke.
I don't think he's perceptive enough to do that. I think he bungled his way into a conversation, saw that people were doing that, and the people that did that didn't like him. So he's like, oh, I know how to get on their side. I also like this cartoon. Now I'm your friend.
I completely believe that. I mean, literally, he just recently tweeted, "Send me your dankest memes."
Oh yeah. Yeah, that'll do
that
it.
Was like a couple days ago.
I will, you know what? I'll do him the solid of being his friend all the way on the long walk. And at the end, there's the guillotine, and then we're done. Can't hold your hand anymore through that.
Someone in the chat.
Yeah, he's pretty bad.
I don't think you should have to make him walk to the guillotine. You can give him a ride.
Yeah, but then it won't last as long. He's gonna get the whole friendship experience. We want to have a little arc in the like 15 feet that we got to go.
I would say if people are having to walk to the guillotine, you don't have enough guillotines. Well, bring it closer. Yeah.
We'll airlift the guillotines.
So someone in the chat has brought up Ollie Philosophy Tube's video about Elon Musk, and I just wanted to say I really, really liked that video. That was awesome. Like how he tied together, because I had never really thought about it, because like I was saying before, I was in the hacking scene in the 90s, and I thought that was quite a left-wing movement because we were really against the US government and various other things. But what actually happened to all those people? Because I abandoned, like, I left the hacking scene when I got my first serious girlfriend. Like, I'm out. Like, immediately I was out. But anyway, if I hadn't done that and if I'd stayed with him, I'd probably be a right libertarian now, because that's what happened to all of those people. Like, it's actually really, and I hadn't really joined those dots together until I watched that video. I was like, holy shit, yeah, they're right. All of those left-wing types in the hacking scene and in computer tech in the 90s in general are all fucking right libertarians now.
I've always had such a strong revulsion to right libertarians that like becoming an anarchist was difficult for me, because some of the rhetoric people were using sounded too much like libertarian rhetoric that I was just like put off immediately. The first time I heard an anarchist call someone a statist.
Oh yeah.
Like I was just like, are we doing this?
Yeah. Yeah, see that I was actually just going to bring that up is because left anarchists real anarchists used to use the word status, but we don't anymore because of right libertarianism. And
We used to use the word libertarian.
I still do. Like yeah, in the first video I'm working on for my channel, it's a sort of glossary of words that exist in mainstream discourse but are used differently by anarchists. And one of them is of course libertarian. And in that video, in that section, I basically say, look, I'm going to use the word libertarian. I know I'm not going to reclaim it back from the right or anything like that, but it's, you know, they are not libertarians and we are libertarians. So I'm not going to just shy away from using it.
We're classical
I think there's a certain point where you have to be almost like a little prescriptive with people. You know, everybody's got like a hang up and there's certain things that I just won't let go. I remember arguing with someone in the Lacey Green's mentions about a word that she used. She called something that wasn't what it was, and I got really on her about it. And someone was like, well, I mean, I'm sure, you know, technically she's right, because what she means is more like this other thing. And I was like, yeah, but that retreat works for like everything. So it's not really a response to the criticism. So we had a whole thing about that. I've noticed, I think I was in middle school and I found a funny quote from like Bakunin or somebody. I don't even remember what it was. And I was at a family gathering and I was talking to some of the adults because that was what I did, is I sat at the adults table and talked politics when I was like 9. And it tells you a lot. I still doing that today. Still doing that.
They don't let me sit at the adult table anymore, so you're lucky.
Well, we're mounting a revolution soon, so you'll get your seat. Everybody gets a seat.
Oh, throw this table hierarchy.
Yeah, we'll flip the table.
Literally flip the table. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, if we eat on the table upside down, then we sit on the ground, and then everybody gets a seat. It's perfect.
Yeah, it's East Asian style.
It's a finite resource of the edge of the table, but that's fine. We'll deal with that when we come to it. Oh no, sorry, that's a tangent. I was just gonna say, at one point, I was like, I think I'm a libertarian. And my mom was like, no, I'm 12. And she's like, maybe don't. she was like a second wave feminist. She's a very progressive person. I mean, still definitely like a liberal, but very much, like a lot of my family are kind of in that mindset. And I was at her family's family gathering. And I was like, I think I might be a libertarian. And looking back, that was literally as much thought as I gave, like potentially being a right-wing libertarian. And then I was like, nah, like I'm good. I'm like one of those people, but it's got to be consistent.
And the thing about, like, you literally reminded me of something when you were talking about going to the guillotine. And it was a Punky Brewster episode that I think was, in my mind...
Who's going to explain what Punky Brewster is to Gwen?
Yeah, you're going to have to do that. I'm so sorry.
Punky Brewster.
God damn, you thought so.
Was an 80s sitcom, and it was 80s, right? It wasn't even 90s.
I believe it was. Let's find out for sure. Indeed, I'm already on it.
All right, so it was 80s, possibly 90s sitcom about a.
It was both. Started in the 80s.
Okay.
Oh no, it also ended in the 80s. Never mind. It was just 80s.
All right, so an 80s sitcom about a young, like an orphan. Basically, her mother abandoned her, and she was sort of lost with her dog until she was found by this cranky old man who took her in as his personal waif, I guess. I don't know. So he became like her foster father. And even though he was cranky and hated everybody, so that was sort of the setup, right? So there's this one episode where she overhears him talking to somebody who's like a rich woman that he wanted to date. But she was like, well, I don't want kids and you have this kid. So Punky Brewster hears this and decides to run away with her dog. And this happens, of course, in the middle of a blizzard, a huge snowstorm. And so she finds her way to this other guy's tent. And he is also a kid who has run away from home. And he's having problems with his family. But they're like together, and this older kid helps her out and keeps her from dying of exposure in this horrible snowstorm, and calls her family, finds out who her family is and calls them. So they show up, and the old guy goes to take Punky Brewster home. And then there's the rich woman who has decided not to date these people and not to have anything to do with them. But what she says is, this kid is, well, you should probably call your family too. And he's like, I don't want to. I have nothing to do with them. And she's like, well, get in my limo and I will drive you to a place where the homeless people go. That's it. Like, not, I'm going to take you in. Not, I'm going to help you out because you've been such a great person. I'm going to drive you to the nearest shelter in my limo.
Can we talk about what a weird day it would be at the homeless shelter?
And I remember watching that and going, something is really wrong here. Like, really, really wrong here. And this was, I mean, this is Reaganomics. Like you wouldn't believe. This is trickle-down economics. The 10th power.
Well, except that there's a homeless shelter.
Well, that's true.
The older kid is the one she's going to drive to the homeless shelter. What happens to that kid?
He gets to ride in a limo to a homeless shelter.
Yeah, that's a good ending.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. And he actually says that. Like, he's like, they're really going to think, they're really going to wonder at me showing up in this limo at the homeless shelter. That's the whole line.
Do you know what the problems with his family are?
He doesn't specify. He just sort of says things like, I can't exactly remember, but it's like, I don't know, his mom had a boyfriend and they weren't getting along and there were some problems there. But literally, this is the episode. Like, I'm not kidding.
That's amazing.
I was really waiting for you to like add something up after the limo ride. In my head, I was thinking like a ride to the guillotine, and I was like, well, we don't want to take that kid to the guillotine. We don't want to take Elon Musk to any kind of shelter either. Like, I don't know what you would do. You could just stand around and then leave. He has to stay outside.
That's what like, at the very least, she could have been like, well, you could sleep out this horrible snowstorm in my limo.
But like, even from a story writing perspective, that's not a satisfying conclusion. Like all you have to do is pull like a Great Expectations and they get a letter in the mail that they sorted their life out and now they're doing okay. Like, you know,
little post-documentary text dialogue box, thing where it says, they did this and this, and it was all great.
They invented Google, and now they're billionaires.
Imagine doing a documentary about the founders of Google and then having that part as the title card at the end.
This is really interesting because I mean, I've never heard of this show, but that character sounds like they're queer-coded a little bit.
Oh, very queer-coded.
Yeah.
Like, not only... don't even start. But, like... And Punky Brewster was incredibly queer-coded. And this kid was also...
The limo thing doesn't fit. I'm having a real hard time.
Like, I can't help you because it's so weird. It was so weird that I think that kind of... And this was in the middle of sort of...
I'm getting a phone call. I just got to step away.
No problem. in the Reagan years where everything was like, you know what's awesome? Capitalism.
When you go back and watch
Always.
Ghostbusters and the bad guy is the EPA,
Yeah.
because they're like, we want ghosts out of here. I don't feel like the EPA has a lot of regulations vis-a-vis ghosts.
Yeah. But like this was it's hard.
I
It's hard
haven't
to
seen it because
explain.
I had no like inclination, not Punky Brewster, but I had no inclination to see the remake of Ghostbusters, and I was so put off by all the drama around it, I didn't even bother. But like, also, it took me years to even see the original Ghostbusters, and eventually I did.
Scary.
Yeah,
Renegade Cut has a great video about the original Ghostbusters. Do you know the channel Renegade Cut?
you know, I might have watched
Yeah.
the exact one.
Yeah,
Because I think there was a video that talked me into seeing it, because I watch like
Right.
film analysis videos more than I'll watch
Oh,
movies.
he's not kind to the film. Well, I mean, he likes the film, I think, but he doesn't like its politics at all. And the video
No.
is basically about how Ghostbusters is a pro Reagan film. Yeah.
That's kind of how we got on the topic, actually.
Oh, really?
The EPA or the bad guy in Ghostbusters?
Yeah. Well, not just the
And-
EPA, but the whole government. Yeah.
Peter Venkman also is a sex pest in that movie. It's really weird to go back and watch it. Like the sexual politics of Ghostbusters are real fucking weird.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Isn't there I vaguely remember a scene where Sigourney Weaver gets possessed by a ghost?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's very weird. It's like what? Yeah.
That was the only
out of
scene in that movie
nowhere.
that freaked me out.
That's not
scene,
even the weirdest one. The Dan
I think I know what
Aykroyd
you're going to
scene
say here. I think
Oh,
I have a.
of ghost rape.
Yes.
There was
I was
a
just going
Dan
to bring that up.
Aykroyd ghost rape scene.
And they just never bring it up again after it happens. It's so weird.
so
Yeah.
It's
weird.
also, and I don't, I definitely question whether or not I should even mention this, but in that scene when he concludes the act, he like crosses his eyes.
Yes.
Why?
Yeah, it ends on a comedy note. It's bizarre. Yeah.
It's just, but that's not what people do when they orgasm. They don't close their eyes.
No. Yeah.
Are you sure? Have you ever like had anyone?
Have I ever made a woman orgasm? No, Christy, obviously not.
Yeah, but are you telling me you're some kind of weirdo who's never orgasmed while holding a mirror up in front of your face? What's wrong with you?
That's the only way I can do it now.
Oh God. It was a sex dream. That's what we get from the chat. I don't believe that.
It doesn't play it that way, I think. I don't know. Maybe it does. I'd have to watch it again to be totally
I
sure.
think that
It does kind of like do that wavy in and out.
All right. Okay. Maybe. Yeah.
But it was kind of like, okay, here's this character, all of a sudden has a sex dream about a ghost raping him. And now we're done and let's go on. Like,
Yeah,
it
like-
didn't make any sense, and it was kind of like,
Because there's no sexy ghosts in the movie. Like, and it's his job to kill ghosts. So why does he also want to fuck the ghosts? It's just it raises so many questions.
Yeah.
Are the ghosts people?
Not all of them. I can't imagine Slimer was ever a person.
He's John Belushi is the joke.
Oh yeah.
You never heard that?
I don't think if that's in the movie, I missed it. If it's not, I never heard it.
It's like a thing. When they filmed Ghostbusters, they originally had John Belushi in the cast. I can't remember as what character, but he died, and so they apparently, this could be urban legend, but they say that Onion Head or Slimer is meant to be John Belushi's ghost, which I think is pretty distasteful if it is true.
Yeah.
but I've heard that said many times.
I've heard it said. I never really got any. And it's weird because Dan Aykroyd was such a big friend of John Belushi. Like, why would he do that to his friend?
I will say that if I die tragically, that is the tribute I want.
Well, you never know. He might have just put it in his will. It'd be like, hey, if I die before this movie's over, could you just make me into a weird, freaky monster for no reason?
I want
but
to
then
be.
Don't ever confirm it.
I want to be seen eating many hot dogs.
One thing that's really weird to me about Ghostbusters is that the screenplay was written by Harold Ramis, who went on to make Groundhog Day, which is like a basically just a thinly veiled and Buddhist analogy. How did he go from pro-Reagan in 84 to a Buddhist in 93? That must have been a big change.
Well, he adapted it from an original screenplay by Dan Aykroyd, who. When Dan Aykroyd wrote it, it was like bonkers and much less of a comedy. And it took place in a world where there just were Ghostbusters. They weren't a small business.
Right. Yeah.
And they would just go from dimension to dimension. And because Dan Aykroyd doesn't understand that his thoughts are strange.
Because I got to tell you, pro-Reagan and Buddhist is that's a Venn diagram where there's no overlap, like whatsoever. Like there's none. So it's just a bizarre change to me.
Yeah, you're talking about two circles on opposite sides of the paper.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
The sexual politics, though, of Groundhog Day are not cool.
No, yeah, I really liked that video that Macintosh did about that. It really, really opened my eyes. I hadn't really thought about that before. He's bang on. He was absolutely right. Yeah. It's pro-stalker.
So many movies, like especially comedies, when you go back and watch them, and they just have full-on sexual assault that's played for laughs. Like,
yeah,
fucking Revenge of the Nerds.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, it's considered like a legitimate revenge. Like if you're an uncool guy, it's considered in that movie it's legitimate revenge to sexually assault a cool girl. It's like, yeah, that's not great.
Not even that, like the entire thing, and they are bystanders, like the women. Like it's really about these two sort of fraternities that are fighting each other, right?
Yeah.
And the hot chicks they kind of participate a little bit, but they're just a sorority that happens to have a lot of dating with the bad fraternity. And for that, like, they are constantly slut-shamed. They are harassed. Their pictures are taken. They're put on plates. You know, like, every indignity is visited upon them just because basically they're dating guys. These are the incels.
It explains so much about like the nice guy mentality. You know, like, oh, we're the nerds and we're smart. We should have the prize of being with beautiful women instead of the dumb jocks, the Chads and Stacys of the world.
I tell you what, incels and MGTOW, volcels and all that shit has made it quite awkward being celibate, like for other reasons. Because I'm celibate, but for Buddhist reasons that are like the opposite of those fucking guys. And like whenever I bring it up, there's people mentioning them, and it's like, no, it's not to do with them. It's nothing to do with them. I'm not like them, all right?
I don't like I am.
I imagine anarchists had a similar thing during the Unabomber thing, you know? Like, no, we're not like those people. We're not primmies. Trust me.
Oh, well, that's full circle, because I meant to bring this up earlier and we moved on and I forgot about it. But the moment when I knew that the conservative narrative was going to shift is when the you know how we could have like a canary in a coal mine analogy. It was the Coulter in the coal mine, because Ann Coulter made a tweet about the Unabomber and left-wing violence, and I was like, this is the point where we're going to start shifting now, because she's seen it all. Like, she's been around. So like this is the point where she knows, okay, now I have to start like deflecting towards the left as opposed to like going the other way where it's like, well, we don't know who this could be. Now it's got to be like, yeah, definitely a leftist because this is all going to be propaganda.
Also, the Unabomber said that all leftists have to be destroyed. So that's a...
Yeah, but like... Yeah.
I mean, he was like disturbed, that dude. Yeah, so I was just going to say that it's obvious that the right wingers were going to try and blame the left. But what really pissed me off was the amount of centrists who said it might be a leftist. It's like, yeah, I realize that, yeah, we don't like centrists much. We don't like mainstream Dems. But if we're going to fucking send bombs to people in the mail, it's not going to be to them. You know, we dislike them, but we dislike the far right a fuck of a lot more. Yeah, and there's no leftist is going to bomb a fucking centrist. It's not going to happen.
Well, I can think about like all of the most like
except for Alexander Berkman. That was silly, one time.
Like other leftists that I've argued with, like because there are a lot of leftist tendencies. There's a lot of people out there who it's not just even I don't agree with their ideas, but like personally I find them repugnant as an individual human being. And I just like I can't stand the way they talk to people. It's just everything about them. And there are a few people like that where I would think to myself, okay, if a leftist would do something like that, the problem is even if it was going to be like a whole bunch of Democratic politicians, I was reading the list of the people who as they were recovering the packages from them, the new one would pop up on the news and it'd be like, there's a new report that this person got a package. And I would be like, well, that's another Democrat. And I was like, this is just a list of Democrats. And it's like, you know, if the Clintons are going to be on there, then you'd figure like the Bushes would be on there, stuff like that. Because exactly. Like left-wing people hate George Bush, the Bush family as a whole. So, and it just didn't make any sense. So I was talking to my parents, I was talking to my mom, and I was like, this is definitely not a left-winger. You could just tell after a certain point. There's just so many tells.
Do you guys get a lot of messages from very obvious cops trying to get you to condone violence?
I don't think I have
used to anonymously on Curious Cat, but
yeah,
every now and again I just turn that off and I don't tell anybody.
Right. I never had a Curious Cat. I never made one.
I get so many questions that are so obviously like a cop trying to get me to admit something illegal.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like so incredibly transparent. I don't know why they think. Yeah. I guess if you do it enough, eventually you're going to get somebody, but
I just always think of that Steve Buscemi meme. Hey, cool kids.
How do you do, fellow kids?
I don't know I hope I don't offend anybody who might be watching. We've got 64 people in the chat, so I guess there's a chance. I doubt it, though. I trust almost everybody here. That's how I feel about Dangists. Some of the people that I interact with on Twitter are very like, hello, fellow leftists. Isn't Dangists, colonialism bad? And it's like, yeah, right on, man. And then it's just some other weird like, man, fuck sex workers. And it's like, can you just like try?
Yeah. It's funny, like when they try and be anarchists because they just don't know enough about it to pull it off. It's hilarious.
Who's okay? Who does everyone on the left agree to make fun of more? ANCAPs or Dangists?
Oh man, you can't. Listen,
I think ANCAPs.
We haven't taken enough opportunities, but ANCAPs we haven't taken enough opportunities to really go in on it, I think, because there are so many easy ways that they're patently absurd, but real takedowns are still wanted, I think.
I get a lot of people telling me to like go off on ANCAPs more, but I feel like it's kind of punching down in a way because they're all 16 and I'm a grown man. And I just, it's a weird look.
Yeah. One thing I do often bring up is that, you know, people often say that ANCAPism is silly because it's never been tried and it never would work if it was tried. What the later is true to a degree, but I would argue it has been tried. And not just like the little examples people bring up of like a bunch of like right libertarians trying to create a society in Central America or whatever. That has happened. But I would argue that early Industrial Revolution England was an ANCAP society. because there were no regulations on industrial activity at all. There was nothing stopping the corporations, and they were large corporations at that time, who were from, you know, they were fully able to act in the free market with no restrictions whatsoever. And what did that I was just going to finish. What did that result in? Child slave labor.
Well, I think another good example might be company towns in the United States. Like,
just that's what I always think of. Yeah.
Celebration, Florida, the Disney town. Yeah.
Yeah, like some Rockefeller or Carnegie bullshit, where it's like what's the old line? I owe my soul to the company store. I feel like ANCAPs think that they're going to be the store owners, which is very, very optimistic.
I think they think that everyone will get a shot to be, which is almost sadder in a way.
And then if they fail, it's on them. Yeah. That's how they think.
And the people who are going to rise to the top, like the creme de la creme, are YouTubers. We're going to be like, we're going to be rolling it. You know, if ANCAPism ever goes through.
I think that's what's, you know, separates the left and the right on YouTube, is that like the left see the absurdity of everything we're doing on this platform. We're screaming into the abyss. But the right thinks that they're on like a moral crusade. We're going to get those SJWs, and we're going to show them that they're triggered because we said the word "re" at them. Gotcha.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, the main reason I want to do anarchist content on YouTube isn't because I want to make everyone anarchist, and I think that's going to happen. It's because I want to be able to, on my deathbed, look back on my life and say, at least I tried to do something, you know? That's it, really. That's it.
I don't intend to die. But
wow.
Man, I'm so
like that.
You and I are so different. I've already picked out my funeral music. Like, I've got the whole thing planned.
Yeah, you know, it's like it's your choice, but I'm not going to do it, I don't think.
If anyone's interested, it's the circus theme song, and that's the song. It's gonna be at my funeral. God damn it! I want people to be super awkward. Yeah.
If I had a funeral, I would say probably Monster Mash, because I would want my funeral to be a graveyard smash.
Oh yeah, I actually. I have two things about funerals, and I think if I do die, I don't know if I'm going to try it, but if I do, it might be neat to have like a pyre, but then like that's probably like every time I think about it, I think of all the ways that people would try to make that not happen. So then I just
want a natural burial.
I also have to have like a regular request, and probably that would be to make sure that there's like a lot of snacks and like dancing and music and stuff, because I don't want people to be like really upset.
I thought you were going to say there was a lot of snacks buried with you, like an Egyptian king.
just in case I become a zombie and my brain, just because I'm used to it, just like mindlessly shambling to the Walgreens to get some like gummy candies or something. Yeah.
I think that at mine, I'm going to outlaw certain phrases, like, I'm so sorry for your loss. Like, you can't say this. Like, I don't care what you say, but
you have to actually think about being compassionate rather than just say the thing that everyone says. Yeah.
And then drink a lot. Like, those are my two things.
Oh, nobody's going to be drinking at my funeral. Nobody is going to be drinking at my funeral. That would be an insult to me.
I think I would like my funeral to be a roast.
I thought of that, and then I realized there are some people, I'll have to have a list of people who aren't invited.
Like, see, that's just it. I don't care. They can say whatever they want. I'm dead. It's fine.
But like, I don't know. But what about the people left behind, you know? I want to give them a good experience.
This is super dark, but I kind of always assumed my funeral would be before my parents' funerals. And so I figured they would be there and then wouldn't want people dunking on me because that would hurt their feelings. So that's That's pretty
as
dark.
a,
Sorry.
as a young trans person, I get the context. I understand in a sense. I don't. It's almost not dark in some cases. Sometimes that can almost be like a coping thought, I think.
It's not even necessarily to do with mental illness. It's more about, for me, suicide is like the ultimate power. That when you've got nothing else left, you've got that. And like, I don't know, like I kind of figured most people die from a disease or something that slowly affects them over time rather than an immediate accident. And I kind of figured I'd have some kind of, debilitating period that would go on. And that's more what I'm talking about, I guess, is that rather than suffer through that, I would take the last resort.
Oh, I see what you're saying now. So it's kind of that's a different kind of understanding of that situation. That's interesting.
I totally get that. Like every time I've been in a really bad place, I've been like, well, if it gets really, really bad, I can just kill myself. That would be okay.
That's why I really don't like how a lot of religions demonize that, because I think that's wrong to demonize that. I don't know. But
that we should be pretty careful speaking this way. If anyone is in the chat and feels like
if anyone is in a really bad place, don't watch this. Go and get some good help. Get some advice. Don't
and there are places you can call. There are phone numbers you can call. That
indeed. I mean, and they're good. I've used them. So.
And it is.
That'll have to be I guess a description thing for after we're done. But for right now,
there's quite a lot of things that we've discussed in this hangout that could probably do with a content warning.
Sometimes I get to the point where I'm doing a response video to
warning everything. Like if there's even
exactly.
Content warning: gossiping about other YouTubers.
That's all this is. We don't get existential. We don't talk about like terrorist efforts. We don't talk about government policy. We talk about other YouTubers, and then we're done.
And what scenes from Ghostbusters we liked and didn't like.
Oh yeah, there was that bit.
We cover all the bases.
And then also everybody explains the 90s to me.
80s. Oh my god.
I mean, I was only a child in the 80s, so I can't really. But the 90s, that was my decade. I remember it well. Oh, it was cringy. A lot of it was very cringy.
I don't know what you're referring to. It was all very cool.
Oh yeah. Day glow, fucking highlighter clothing and shit.
I mean, that's.
Oh man.
Have you seen my channel branding?
Yeah, good point.
I just figured you saw that one ContraPoints video and then you were just like, yeah, what if we did that, but like really well all over the place?
No, it's purple and green has always been my favorite colors, and I've always wanted to. I always find them really pleasing together.
My favorite color is purple.
My favorite color is violet.
You just had to be different, didn't you? You just had to be different.
I did, because it's what I'm eventually choosing for my first name. Gwen is my middle name. Guinevere is my middle name. It's a bit posh for a first name, I thought, And middle names are kind of a posh thing anyway, originally. So it's,
oh man, if I've got two middle names, does that make me bougie as fuck? Or
I hope so, but purely in the aesthetic way.
I mean, the reason I have two middle names is because it would have been a double surname thing, but I just don't like that my father's side of my family very much, so I'm not going to have that as my surname. I mean, the other way around.
If it makes you feel better, Muslim people's middle names are the entirety of their known patrilineal heritage.
Huh.
Actually, I have a friend whose family traces its lineage back to a certain native culture, and they have a naming tradition where they add names on over time. And he was talking to me once about his dad's many names and the conventions for it. It's like friggin' fascinating, because it can get so interesting and so complicated, and also it sort of almost becomes like poetry or like a song after a certain point. Like it's an oral history, and I think that's really neat.
Man, that's the stuff that I'm not well versed in at all as a historian, is social history. I'm terrible at it. People like tell me stuff like the basic stuff that you learn and like, you know, doing it first year. I'm like, what? It's terrible.
Just one thing I wanted to talk about, and so Gwen, you mentioned that you wanted Violet to be your chosen name.
Yeah.
So, and as someone who spent an inordinate amount of time trying to figure out what name I would want to go by if I went by a woman's name, I'm non-binary. It's not a big deal. Nobody, I'm not trying to brag or anything, but I've always felt very strongly that it would have to start with the same letter as my current name. And I don't know why. And I guess it never really occurred to me that you could just pick any name.
I was fixated on that for years, and I should have known, or rather should have been willing to come out as trans at that point, because I was like, it is very important to me that I know what my name would be if I were a woman, and that has no relation to the rest of my social life in any capacity, and how dare you suggest? And
I've known... Oh, so I was just going to say, I've known that about me for my entire life, because my mother told me that if I'd been born a girl, what my name would be. Jasmine. Which is...
my mom said I would have been Laura, and that's my girlfriend's name, which is unfortunate that I couldn't jump straight to that.
That would have been, that'd be a bad idea. That'd be just confusing.
My mother claims she always knew I was a boy and didn't even consider the possibility that I could have been a girl.
See, it's the opposite with me. She was sure I was going to be born a girl, and I wasn't.
I had a dream when my second son, I was pregnant, and he came to me and told me his name, and his name is Devin. So I went, okay. So that was it. Like, I don't know if that's, like, his name is Devin now, so I don't know.
That's
it's
amazing.
Just a stupid weird
thing. It would be really cool. Well, maybe not, but it would be really cool if like you grew up and started a religion or something, and then that just coincidentally there was like this vision that you had about who he was to be.
See, you and I are very different people, Christy, because if that were me, I'd be like, no, I'm the parent. I choose the name.
Well, no, because I in the dream I said something like, "Oh, I was going to name you this," and like, I'm sorry. I've had 3 boys, and every single time I've been like, "You're going to be a girl." It's never happened. So I think in the dream I said something like that, and they're like, "Oh no, this is my name. Shut the fuck up, woman." Like, all right, fine.
It's pretty rude.
Something just popped into my head from the other day, and I just got to bring it up here because it was amazing. So there's maybe I could, no, I won't be able to find it. But so there was a person on Twitter who was a reactionary anti-feminist type, who was, there was a whole thread where they were going on about stuff. And one of them chimed in with one of the most silly things I've ever heard, which is, he said, pregnancy always disadvantages the man. Men always have the short end of the stick when it comes to pregnancy. It's like, are you listening to yourself talk? What
bop, chicka, bop, bop.
What?
Well, Garrett, it's gross, and we've got to look when the baby's born.
Yeah, we've got to be in the... Well, actually, we don't have to be in the room. We could just bugger off again.
I'd like to sit down with all the guys who think that and watch all of the Alien movies and then just not comment on it and just walk away. Also, trans people.
That reminds me of your Halloween video, TS, which is a video I really liked, by the way. You mentioned that there are people out there who claim that Alien is not a horror film. Those people are fools. They're absolute fools.
Yeah.
It's a common opinion.
I know a lot of people who have told me that Alien can't be my favorite horror film because it's not scary enough. And I'm like, dude, you're not thinking about it enough.
Oh yeah,
horror is not about scariness, for one thing. That's a misconception. But yeah, go on.
No, all horror movies are scary. I don't know if you've ever seen Leprechaun, but it's
yeah, It has nothing to do with trying to make the audience have a fear response necessarily. I mean, sometimes horror filmmakers do try and do that, but that's not the unifying factor about horror that ties the genre together at all.
No, it's the focus on the.
Well, I think, there's a sense in which alien movies scare me in the sense that they freak me out. Yeah. So it's not like I'm jumping in my seat like, oh my god. Although I did do that once on a rewatch of Alien, which is silly because it's a jump scare.
But that's the thing is. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say. Jim Sterling points out that is not being scared. That's being startled. That's not the same. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's a different thing. But I was just saying with respect to Alien as a horror film, I meant that it makes me uncomfortable on such a deep level that I then almost like I would call that being scared. But I guess it's. I mean, really, it's good to qualify that.
Well.
A different way.
I think another reason why that person is wrong is that Alien is actually a very frightening movie. Like it's a very scary movie. Like I don't know what they're talking about that it's not scary enough. Like it's
that is weird.
If you think it's not scary, just pretend you're the cat in all of the situations where it's like right by the alien.
Yeah, for me, Alien involves a lot of existential dread. Like it really nails that in a beautiful way. And yeah, like it's just because it was so clearly made as a horror film by Ridley Scott. All the tropes,
it's a slasher movie.
Exactly. It's so clearly coded that way that I can't understand how you could watch that film and not get that. It's like, holy crap. Because that's the thing about the Alien series is each one of the films is in a different subgenre of science fiction. Yeah, and the last one, Art House, didn't really jive with the audience much. Yeah, that was a weird move combining science fiction with art house in an alien film. But
I've heard people say that Psycho is not a horror movie.
That's just I don't even know where to go with that.
Is that because there's a lot of suspense in it? You can be both at the same time.
No, it's you know what the reason is just because people think that horror is like a demeaning term, so that any movie that is
right.
Like Silence of the Lambs, that's not a horror movie, it's a thriller.
I always try to talk about that in the context of like fantasy and science fiction literature, because those used to be considered like genre fiction, like they were such low art. And now like Tolkien is considered like one of the best writers, possibly something to do with those films that were based on the books and that I like very much, and I'm not going to criticize right now.
He was not one of the best writers, though.
Well, it's Tolkien. Yeah, it's a lot of it's perception.
He was one of the earlier fantasy writers, and a lot of people mistake that for being one of the best. That's not the same. Like other people hadn't contributed as much to it. That he contributed a lot to the genre because nobody had done that before, but that doesn't make it better than other things that came later. Yeah.
Well, when people talk about all the virtues of Tolkien's work, it's kind of like, yes, that is what fantasy would be like if linguists wrote it. Like that is how that works.
I always got to the same point in Lord of the Rings before I decided to stop reading it. And I tried to read it many times. But it's when they spend a whole fucking like 3 pages describing a tree. And then they go to a bar and they describe every single character in the bar and all of their backstories and all of their names and all the different languages. And they mention, oh, by the way, Strider's in the back. They don't tell you anything about Strider. And then it turns out Strider is one of the main characters. And the only thing you know about him is that his name is Strider. And then later you find out that's not even his fucking name. It's like every time I'm like, fuck this.
So
it's like a nod.
So you gave up at the Strider introduction scene. That's pretty early on.
Yeah, no, Garrett, it's not that I gave up once. It's that I multiple times tried to read this book, and every time I got there, and I was like, "No, I don't need this in my life." I
think I was too young to be that cynical when I first read Lord of the Rings, and now it's in my brain.
It is funny to me when you were talking about how there's a lot of film people who are snobby about horror, TS, because I felt personally attacked by that. Because I don't like horror much, and I am a film nerd, but I do respect horror. It's just I have personal tastes in film, and it doesn't really. Most horror doesn't really appeal to me. But like one thing that's really good about horror is that it does tend to be cheaper to make. So it's really a lot of introductory. A lot of people's film introductions getting skilled up as filmmakers is through horror. So it's actually really important in the film industry for that reason.
But it also
recently I have been getting into romance novels. And I think it's specifically because for so long they have been I don't even know what, like, they have been just treated as shit. And I'd never read them. Like it was just assumed that they were shit. Because people will say, well, they're genre, they're formulaic. Okay. Like, as opposed to all the incredibly non-formulaic shit that we watch every day.
Yeah, in other genres, yeah. No, there's only one
Yeah.
genre that I just write off as a whole, and that's the Western genre. And that's because they're just samurai movies. Yeah, you know.
Well, you know, I've done 2 videos on Westerns.
I know it's an unpopular opinion, but I'm just a massive Kurosawa fan, and like I can just see aspects of his work in like every Western film that's ever been made.
I'm sorry, Garrett, but I thought you were a big Star Wars fan.
Yeah, well, Star Wars almost was a full-on space Western, but Lucas decided to pull back from that.
And it's also like a complete stylistic ripoff of The Hidden Fortress by Kurosawa.
Well, 2 of the characters are. They're just sort of, he just sort of supplants them into it. But then those characters from Hidden Fortress were kind of
space fortress.
But they were kind of
totally different.
Well, kind of. But those characters from Hidden Fortress were also kind of ripped off from Shakespeare. So I don't know. Like, it's all goes full circle. Kurosawa was heavily influenced by Shakespeare. Although it is funny because most people wouldn't see a Western and immediately think this is like Shakespeare.
Well, Shakespeare was heavily influenced by Chaucer. So
actually, that's really interesting because I did a video that's way too long and way too rambly and way too poor quality audio for me to actually recommend people watch it. But it's an hour long and it's called The Privatization of Us, a Star Wars story. And it's like a really long rant about capitalism in Star Wars and capitalism with Star Wars in real life and just a whole bunch of nonsense. And it was going to be like 3 times as long, and I left a ton of stuff out, and it was just a complete disaster. But the one thing that I am really proud of is I totally went in on that. I totally like talked about at some point this whole concept of like losing my train of thought actually now. I just went off a cliff.
Kurosawa,
Shakespeare,
yeah. Thank you, Garrett. Always on my track. Thank you. So yeah, Shakespeare in Star Wars. There's a bunch of like I guess you could almost call them like play novels, but they're adaptations of the Star Wars films that you can get, and they're written to be Shakespearean or rewritten to be Shakespearean.
Oh right, yeah.
And how well it plays, especially in terms of the dialogue, because a lot of Star Wars' dialogue is just written to be straight to the viewer. Like, I'm literally just going to give you this information. And that totally works as an aside in a Shakespearean context. And that's, like, I just love how Shakespearean Star Wars is. And that makes it sound very cultured in a way that a lot of people don't often think of it. But there's an argument for it, so whatever.
And I would say also that the character Salacious Crumb is essentially Richard III, and I don't think I have to justify that opinion. I think you all know what I'm talking about.
Well, you know, it's funny because you were talking about how people judge horror as low art. A lot of people have similar estimations of things like the Ewoks and Jar Jar Binks and, like, I don't know, name a thing. But that's Shakespeare loved that crap.
So
like,
Harris, that's you.
I will just point out, I just want to revisit something you said. I'm a big Star Wars fan. I'm actually mainly a fan of the expanded universe, not necessarily the films. I think the films, there's definitely a lot of good things about them, and I really love Empire. But you know, I'm more interested in like the comics and the games and the novels. Well, some of the novels. There's a lot of bad Star Wars novels, but yeah.
I think the Ewoks have gotten a bad rap.
I agree.
I do think
they try to eat them.
I do think
little
the film
murder bears.
I do think the film would have been better if he'd gone with his original idea and made it made them Wookiees. That would have been awesome.
Oh, I would have tied it together really nicely.
Yeah,
I can see that, but the Ewoks.
But you know why he went with Ewoks is because he was wanting to basically monetize Star Wars figurines and toys to kids. And so he wanted to make them more children-friendly films so he'd make more money from the toys.
And also because I feel like the Ewok sorry, the Wookiee homeworld, Kashyyyk, I believe it's called.
It is.
It was brought to stunning life in the Christmas special.
Oh my god! Oh damn!
Stunning.
The thing that
stunning.
See, George Lucas, I believe, if he had absolute power over human society, the first thing he would do is like erase that from time. Like he so badly wishes that he could do that, but he can't. I kind of feel for him. Not that actually I don't, because he's a billionaire. Fuck him. He's the only billionaire filmmaker.
Oh, really?
Yeah, James Cameron's the second richest, but he's 800 million or something.
Oh well, that
and has actual directorial skill. So.
Ooh.
Oh, don't get
my son.
I wish James Cameron was still using it.
Was yeah, it's been a while. Yeah. He's actually in Wellington right now. In fact, there was supposed to be a press conference for Avatar sequels today. I don't know if it happened.
Can't wait.
Or was it? No, that was yesterday. Sorry, I think that was yesterday. Yeah, I mean, there probably won't be absolute trash fires. They'll be like all right, but
I am interested to see what he does with like Pocahontas 2, kind of.
I say there probably won't be absolute trash fires because the people who wrote them are pretty good screenwriters. They're the people behind the Apes reboot films. Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Yeah, he hired them to write the films. So, you know.
Therefore, I hope that the movie is about like a post-Columbian exchange. The Na'vi are dying from human germs, and the humans come and just completely colonize it and put up Burger Kings and shit.
Well, I've put feelers out to my colleagues in the industry here, and nobody knows fuck all about it. They've been incredibly tight-lipped, but I don't think anyone has access to the scripts or anything. It's a very, very, very secretive, so there's very little information about them, story-wise. I think I heard that they're not set on the same planet. Not entirely set on that planet, anyway. There's moons and whatnot, but beyond that, yeah, it's very... Which is like a bizarre thing to do, I guess, because nobody went to see Avatar for the fucking story. You know, like literally nobody was there to see the fucking story.
Yeah, people were there because the 3D was new. The new type of 3D.
And also because James Cameron tends to push visual effects forward a lot when he does films. So people were like, oh, I wonder how good the visual effects will be. Yeah.
I liked the mountains when they were floating and stuff. I was like, oh, Zendikar, that's cool.
Yeah, but floaty mountains are hardly fucking original. I mean,
yeah, no, that's why I said Zendikar. That's Magic the Gathering.
Oh, I didn't know. yeah. Every fantasy fucking series has a floaty mountain world. It's at least one.
Show me a mountain on the ground for once. Cowards.
I guess we should probably wrap this up at some point. It's been going for over 3 hours.
Yeah. And it has been just a straight ramble the whole time.
Yeah, this was hardly structured, but that's fine.
I tend to have that effect on live streams. Sorry, everybody.
I'm glad. No, this was good.
It has been rough. I think it's been really rough for me.
Yeah.
The past few weeks. And I'm sure it's been really rough for Gwen, and I'm sure it's been really rough for a lot of people on the left. Just like a downward spiral of fascist history unfolding in front of us. So that's good. You know,
I'll tell you what, I helped a trans friend of mine move to this country from the US, and recent events in America have made me incredibly glad that I helped with that. Because holy crap, things are going bad.
And they keep being bad.
American Johnson did that stream with Angie Speaks, which I watched the whole thing, even though like this one, it was really long and a really rambly, great conversation. And in it, there was a part where he was talking about moving to Vietnam and like cost of living and things like that. And it made it sound kind of attractive. And I was already that day thinking about like, where should I go? Like if things get really bad.
I will give Chrissy a link to put in the description. But so there's a thing I often show trans people who are thinking maybe moving somewhere. So there's an article. Basically, there was a British trans woman who was the victim of a hate crime in the UK, and then she moved here, and then her travel visa or whatever expired, and she just stayed, and eventually the government found out, and they had a hearing, and basically she said, look, if I go back to the UK, I'll be terrified for my life. The people who attacked me are still there, you know. And so basically the New Zealand government granted her a residency visa based on that. So I think, and that sets a legal precedent here that I think is really important, because future people will be able to cite that case. So it just makes New Zealand could become kind of a place that trans people can go. I don't know.
Trans Island.
Exactly. Yeah.
With floaty mountains, maybe. Who knows?
But on the downside, you will get decimated by smog.
Actually, I just want to add one thing to what I said, is that this country is not great for male to female transition. I mean, sorry, female to male. But we don't have surgeons here who are qualified for that. So if you need that done here, you have to go to Australia, though the New Zealand government will pay for your expenses to go there and back. It's still awkward and annoying that is the case, and it pisses me off. But I just want to put that warning out there.
Okay.
Every time you drop little things about New Zealand, like, but they will pay your traveling expenses.
Oh yeah.
What am I doing faffing about over here?
Yeah, the New Zealand government's honestly, like, it's a shining light in the ocean of dark that the world is becoming. Like, you know, like yeah, I guess so. But I mean, you know, like, there's a lot of good stuff that's happening here at the moment. Like recently, the government decided on a policy and started like planting lots of trees. They're aiming to plant 100 million trees a year, so that's pretty sweet.
You're such a braggart. That's what I don't like about you.
Canada has legal weed, so.
Oh, that's where we're no, honestly, that is a big problem. We need to get that here, because it's a big problem in our justice system. There's so many people who are locked up who shouldn't be, and it's an absolute disgrace that we haven't decriminalized it yet. So that actually happened? Like, I know that what's his face promised to do that, so he actually did do that. That's nice.
Legal now.
Nice. That's cool. Oh, actually, I read about that because the Canadian government has a website where you can go to learn how to roll joints.
Yeah. What's fun is, and this is the most amazing moment in labor history, the day after marijuana became legal in Canada, in Ontario, the only way to get it legally is through the mail. And that day, Canada Post declared a strike.
Oh.
And it's like, you want your weed, motherfuckers?
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Smart.
Yeah, that is actually quite a good strategy. Yeah.
It is praxis as fuck.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that.
All right. Well, we should wrap this up. It's getting pretty late here. And I am so thankful to the people who have watched this all the way through. I know that it was rambly, and you know, we meant to cover things in a certain way, and you got Prunky Brewster episodes.
Yeah.
That's what you got. So I hope we're hoping for that.
For my closing statement, I just want to mention, because to go back to what I started the hangout talking about, which is the Republicans being horrible in the election and being anti-democratic. One thing that occurred to me a couple of days ago when I was watching Rachel Maddow, because she's had some good coverage of this midterm election, and like I was just thinking that the amazing thing about the Republicans is in most countries, both the left wing and the right wing party, if they lose an election, or particularly if they lose a bunch of elections, what they'll do is they'll become a bit more moderate. They'll move towards the center and be like, okay, our policies aren't working. We'll change our policies. Then more people will vote for us. The Republicans don't do that. They just try and fuck democracy and keep the same policies. And it's actually really weird and like an outlier. And it's, I think, probably the big problem. Like, yeah, that they're not willing to just move their policies to get more votes. They have to try and stop people from voting and do all this anti-democratic shit. So that's
final
bad.
thoughts, Gwen.
Well, I am a lot of things, and as I've mentioned, I'm sure a few times in this stream, I am a mentally ill gay trans woman, and I'm out here living my best life. I started my YouTube channel in large part because sometimes I see things and I think to myself, you know, that's an interesting thing, and I want that to be part of my life right now. I was a vegetarian for so many years, and I do want to go back to it, but not right now. But I was a vegetarian for years and years just because I met someone once who was a vegetarian, and I was like, that looks neat. I want to be like that. And then I just did it for like, I don't know, a decade. But like, I remember it was a while ago when I saw Trump get elected, and I was having a personal crisis, you know, being who I am, and just realizing that I felt like I had come out too late, you know. I just want people to know that that's not the case, and that there's a lot of opportunity and there's a lot of ways to work through that situation. And part of what helped me with that was actually Garrett, because he had a channel and I subbed to that. And I've seen every video at the time that I subbed, every video that was live on that channel, I watched multiple times. So I've seen it. And that was part of why I started my channel. So I'm feeling really good right now. And I just want to pass a little bit of that on to the audience, and back to you, Garrett, because I'm so thankful. Thank you.
Thank you. TS, say something.
Oh, I've never had a thought in the past, and I see no reason to start now.
It's weird that you'd name your channel after something you never had.
You know why I named it Thought Slime?
I don't.
Hey,
and I'm actually kind of curious.
It's because I wanted to have a name that people would go, that's a pretty appropriate channel name. And so far I've gotten about 10. And that's like always makes my day when someone says that, because that's the exact reason that I chose that name.
That's good. I like that.
It's a trap. Oh no.
There's 2 Chrisiosities in the chat
Oh
right
my
now.
It
is blowing my mind.
You just doubled. There's 2 icons. Oh my gosh.
Shoot them both.
What I'm worried about is when these 2 are going to become 4.
Chrisiosity's becoming a gray goo.
Like, I was kicked out of this entire hangout. Like,
yeah, I saw. It was weird.
And everyone was just gone. And then all of a sudden, now there's 2 of me. So there you go. I don't know what happened.
What a weird note to end. The world is weird, but sometimes that's good. I like it.
Okay, but can we hear from the other Chrisiosity maybe before we
we could try.
All right. Have a good night.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.